Good morning. Welcome to the June 9th, 2020 public hearing, public meeting of the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. I'll call the roll. Chair Carroll.
Here.
Commissioner Bland.
Here.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Here.
Commissioner Chapin.
Here.
Commissioner Chen. Commissioner Devonshire.
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Here.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Here.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Here.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Here.
And I see Commissioner Chen just entered the room. So Commissioner Chen.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good morning and welcome to the June 9th public hearing, public meeting of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Today we will be starting the day with a research item, and then we will move to our Preservation Department public hearing items. And those will be followed by our Preservation Department public meeting items, which are items that have already had their public hearing and for which we've already taken public testimony and given comments, and the applicants will be back presenting revised proposals in response to those comments made at the public hearing. And so this hearing and meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, and it is being held via Zoom webinar. So anyone who wishes to just observe the hearing should do so on our YouTube live channel. And anyone who wishes to participate in the hearing should join the webinar at the estimated time of the particular item you'd like to speak about. So if you go to our website, you can refer to our agenda and see the estimated times for each item. And that's when you should join the meeting. We will, at the beginning of each item, also present a slide with the information to call into the webinar. And with that, I will turn it over to our Director of Research, Kate Lemos-McHale.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Item number 1 on the research agenda today is LP 2646, Public School 48, now PS 75Q at Public School 48, the Robert E. Peary School, at 155-02 108th Avenue, aka 155-02 to 156-00 108th Avenue, 108-01 to 108-03 155th Street, in Queens, block 10144, lot 42. And the item proposed for the Commission's calendar is an Art Deco style school building designed by Walter C. Martin, first proposed in 1931 and constructed in 1932 to 36. First proposed in 1931 and completed in 1936, the Art Deco style public school 48 in Jamaica represents an extensive construction program undertaken by the New York City Board of Education to relieve overcrowding in existing school districts and to meet the needs of new growing residential neighborhoods after World War I. It is a notable design by its architect, Walter C. Martin, and an early use of the Art Deco style for elementary school buildings, demonstrating innovations in school planning and a stylistic shift away from the more traditional revival styles commonly used in the early 20th century and into the 1940s. Public School 48 is located at the southeast corner of 108th Avenue and 155th Streets in South Jamaica, Queens, and the proposed landmark site is shown here. Jamaica, one of the first 5 towns that made up Queens County prior to 1898, encompassed the area south of today's Grand Central Parkway, stretching from Brooklyn to what is today the Nassau County line. The village of Jamaica, centered around today's Jamaica Avenue, was a vital link between the farms of Long Island and the markets of New York. The downtown development throughout the 18th and 19th centuries was a result of improved roads and public transportation. However, the area known as South Jamaica remained largely rural farmland until the 20th century, as shown on these maps from 1891 and 1907. And residential development remained scattered into the 1920s. The blue star on these maps shows the approximate location of Public School 48. Plans for a single citywide school system began prior to New York City's consolidation, and a reorganized Board of Education was established in 1901 to administer the system. The prior year, the state legislature had amended the consolidated school law governing the city's schools and abolishing separate segregated schools for African American children. By 1901, PS 48 was established in a one-story wood schoolhouse, which is shown here on the right, which had been built in 1886 as Jamaica's, quote, colored school. Its location is shown on the map in black, and PS 48 was housed in this building until the new school was completed in 1936, which is shown on the map, again with the blue star. The neighborhood's population grew in the 20th century as the former farmland of South Jamaica was developed and a diverse working class neighborhood grew around the area that would be chosen for the new school. Efforts to replace the old school had begun as early as 1905, but it was not until 1931 that plans to build the new public school at 108th Avenue and 155th Street were first announced. The following year, it was reported that the new school would be the first to be built along the P-type plan, incorporating an extended auditorium wing with space for more classrooms, which is shown in this rendering. Superintendent of Buildings Walter C. Martin had originally developed his P-type plan in 1930 for another school, but it appears to have been put aside until its use for PS 48. Walter C. Martin served as superintendent of buildings for the Board of Education from 1928 until 1938, during which time he designed hundreds of new schools or additions to existing schools throughout the 5 boroughs, including 34 new elementary schools and 5 high schools in Queens alone. The Herman Ritter Junior High School in the Bronx, which is shown here, is perhaps his most notable building, built 1929 to 31 and a New York City landmark. Martin's school designs were executed in a variety of styles, from Renaissance Revival to Colonial Revival to Art Deco, displaying the range of stylistic approaches to school design in the interwar period. Martin used the modernistic or Art Deco style for some large projects, such as Herman Ritter, and also adapted it for smaller elementary schools like Public School 48, where his use of the style created modern civic monuments for growing communities. Constructed between 1932 and 36, Martin's design for the 3-story Public School 48 indeed imparts a sense of monumentality appropriate to a civic structure, with very fine details, anchored with strong corner towers and featuring vertical piers with stylized foliate capitals, creating the impression of a crenellated parapet. His use of the Art Deco style drew inspiration from industrial and commercial buildings, reflected in its large window openings, which originally had sash windows as seen in the tax photo from 1940, and incorporated distinctive decorative treatment not seen on some of his other schools in the style. Drawing upon the decorative palette used in his design for the Ritter Junior High School, Martin highlighted the main facade with bicolor brick spandrels, bicolor terracotta plaques evocative of the importance of education, stylized foliate plaques atop the piers, and granite entrance surrounds featuring stylized eagles that harbor bronze doors with bronze and framed multi-light transoms. These highly distinctive decorative features set PS 48 apart from other schools of the period and style. In lieu of carving the name of the school on the facade, as had been done traditionally, Martin applied stylized cartouches with the school's numerical designation, balancing them with the Board of Education seal just above the base of the towers. Prominent within the neighborhood of South Jamaica, Queens, Public School 48 has served its historically diverse community for more than 70 years. Little change since its opening on May 4th, 1936. It is a highly intact example of Walter C. Martin's use of the Art Deco style in the 1930s. Its successful blend of Art Deco design elements and massing was novel for elementary schools at the time it was proposed, and it represents a significant early application of the style for New York City schools. The research department recommends it be added to the commission's calendar for consideration as a New York City landmark. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Kate? Please raise your hand if you have any questions. All right, and I'm not seeing any questions. And so I think I'd like to move toward our motion to calendar this item. I think, this is a very interesting and kind of exciting one for me. It's in my home borough in Queens. And the commission has designated about 58 schools as individual landmarks, buildings that were originally constructed as schools, and 43 of those are public schools. But only two were constructed after, only two buildings that are designated were constructed after 1930. So this would just be the commission's third school building to represent the sort of World War II and post-World War I, World War II and beyond era. And I think, the commission has done extensive surveys over the years of public schools throughout the city. And we're very familiar with the CBJ Snyder schools. This school is designed by one of those two schools that are individually landmarked by the same architect and school superintendent that designed one of the two post-1930s individual landmarks, the Herman Ritter School. The other post-1930 landmark is the Benjamin Franklin High School in East Harlem, which you may recall. So this would only be the second in this particular style. And so I think for a lot of reasons, it's significant, particularly in its details, but I think as a representation of a period in school building that isn't as well represented by our designations, and in a neighborhood that is also not as well represented by our designations, I think this merits our consideration. So I'd like to make a motion that we calendar it. And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Yes, second.
Okay, all in favor of calendaring this item?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. This is calendared, and we will hold a public hearing in the near future. Thank you, Kate. And we'll now move to the Preservation Department's public hearing agenda, and we'll need a few minutes just to transfer control of the screen. And then our Director of Preservation, Corey Harala, will take us through that agenda.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. We're going to start today's Preservation Department agenda with public hearing item number 1, LPC 20-03954. This is an application for a binding report in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 1686, Lot 48, 358 Malcolm X Boulevard in the Bedford-Stuyvesant Expanded Stuyvesant Heights Historic District. This is a vacant lot. The application is to construct a new building.
And commissioners, the applicants are just joining the hearing, and just give us a couple of moments to get situated.
Okay.
And the applicant now has control of the presentation. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
My name is Gerald Caliendo, architect. I'm the applicant, accompanied by my associate, Laura Samuel, who will actually do the presentation.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Lakshmi Samlal, also known as Laura. I represent Gerald J. Caliendo Architects. Our proposal is a 3-family new building application located on 358 Malcolm X Boulevard between Chauncey and Bainbridge Street. This site is part of the Bedford-Stuyvesant Historic District. Before I get into details of the architectural aspects, this vacant site is part of a larger development by the Department of Housing, Preservation, and Development. The program is designed to provide affordable housing, home ownership across 17 different sites in Brooklyn. This is the only site that is part of a historic district. This is the historic district map, as well as the architectural survey of the existing vacant site. According to the survey, Malcolm X Boulevard was once named Reed Avenue. This is the 1940s tax photo. The building was demolished in 2001 by HPD due to a partial collapse. Today, the site remains vacant, as you can see on the right. Here are various views of the proposed building from around the corner on Chauncey Street, from the corner of Chauncey Street and Malcolm X Boulevard, and from down Malcolm X Boulevard. These 3 orientations are visible from a public thoroughfare. Other orientations around the corner are not visible. This is the streetscape view along Malcolm X Boulevard with our proposed site rendered in to the surrounding area. This is a closer CAD line drawing of our proposed building, as well as a zoomed in version. I'll go into details of the facade in future slides. Our facade will be composed primarily of brickwork over a CMU structure, stone sills, stone lintels, and a fiberglass cornice at the top of the building. As well as the ground floor level. I'll go into further detail of the design of the ground floor level on a future slide. This is our proposed rear facade. The community board expressed concerns about the proportions of the windows at the rear facade, and subsequently the design was revised to address this. We changed the rear to show wider paired windows to the taller single windows shown in the current presentation. The rear wall is a proposed gray cement stucco over a CMU structure. Here are photos taken from around the corner on Bainbridge Avenue. The proposed site is approximately 160 feet away. It's obscured by trees and adjacent buildings. It's not visible from this public thoroughfare. To the right, I've indicated a close-up photo of the rear of the buildings directly next door to our site. This is a side elevation, which is directly above the 1-story deli that's next door. This portion of the building is visible from around the corner on Chauncey Street. So we are proposing a gray cement stucco over CMU structure. These are sections of the front exterior wall showing more details of our proposed fiberglass cornice, stone sills, stone lintels, double hung windows, and the exterior brickwork over a CMU structure. Here I have a close-up of the proposed ground floor facade. We are proposing a fiberglass cornice above the ground floor. The existing buildings along Malcolm X have commercial stores on the first floor. However, our building has a residential apartment on the ground floor as part of a 3-family multiple dwelling. In an effort to tie in the streetscape, we tried to create a storefront-like design while still satisfying the requirements of a residential apartment. The decorative features around the windows and doors will be wood trim. The door is recessed about 1 foot from the property line to mimic the neighboring store entrances. This is a more intricate detail of the ground floor wood and decorative wood trim work. This is the fiberglass cornice. This is manufacturer specifications of the cornice at the top of the building. It's prefabricated exactly like this with no seams and no joints, and it's painted to the color of choice. Similar with the cornice that we are proposing on the first floor, it has more of a decorative feature. These are manufacturer photos of the proposed stone and sill lintels, as well as the brick color that we are trying to achieve on this building. Also, we're proposing a brick mold profile around all the windows.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to see if Dan.
These are blown up photos of the buildings, the two buildings to the right of our site. These are the entrances to the store where we sort of took inspiration in our facade design on the ground floor. You can see that the doors are also slightly recessed in from the property line.
Yeah.
This is a full section view of our proposed building. Our floor to floor heights are approximately 8 feet.
That's what I figured.
That's one dwelling unit per floor. The bottom left is a proposed detail of the stucco on the side and the rear of the building. And these are our floor plans. It's one dwelling unit per floor. There's no roof access. There is no bulkheads proposed on our building, as it's not required. All we have are skylights as per FDNY requirements. And thank you.
Thank you very much for your your presentation. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Okay, Commissioner Chapin, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just had two brief questions. One is about the color of the brick. I think that the Photoshop rendering makes it to look, you know, as though it doesn't fit in. And I assume that it is actually fitting in well with its neighbors. If the applicant could just comment on that. And also the use of stucco in the back, just the neighborhood precedent for that. Thank you.
Jerry, you have to unmute.
We're happy to supply brick samples for color selection prior to staff prior to approval.
Okay, can you just speak to the brick that you did choose and how it relates to the context?
We didn't select the brick per se. We tried to get as close with a color as possible, but we will endeavor to do better to with staff to complement the adjacent buildings.
Okay. And of course, you know, final samples would always be reviewed and approved by the staff, but I think your intentions are what the commissioners need to understand at this point. And in terms of the stucco, are there other rear facades within the immediate context that are parged or have stucco? That was the other question.
Most buildings next door are brick. The only building that has stucco, I think, is the one-story deli that's to the right. But the buildings to the left are brick.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I see Commissioner Jefferson, and after that, I'll call Commissioner Bland.
I have two questions. One clarification. The back facade, is it going to remain just two on each floor, or are you changing that? That's question.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Can you repeat that, please?
The back facade. I think if you go to your drawing of the back facade.
I don't have control of the presentation anymore.
You do. You just need to use the arrow key, and you can just go back.
I'm pressing, clicking. Okay.
The back facade, most of your neighbors have 3 windows and you only have 2. Are you adding one, or is that what you're proposing is the 2 windows? That's one question. The second question is, if you go to page 3 of your presentation and you see the alignment of your building, if you see on the left-hand side, you see the existing building, with the existing building being a bit shorter than the building to the right.
Yes.
Is that the reason that go to your facades now? Is that the reason that you're doing the same thing here, or is that the intent, or is it, or because I was just wondering, why not make it all the same height, the building? So that's a question. That's an intent question.
Well, it is an intent to make it shorter than the building next door because of the historical building that used to be there.
Okay.
And also with our floor-to-floor heights that we have, we proposed 8 feet, and we're pretty limited on the interior design of the building, maximizing the size of the dwelling unit for the future owners. So that was another consideration. But the main decision behind the lower building was the historical photo.
And the 3 windows in the back, or 2?
We could look into possibly proposing 3 windows. We would have to look into more detail of the floor plans and see if it's possible, because the bedrooms right now are proposed in the rear of the facade. So it's 1 bedroom to the left, 1 bedroom to the right.
Yeah.
So, and while you're on this, oh, whoops, can you flip back to that photograph? So I do see there is another sort of parged building. There's 2 other parged rear facades in this photo. So I think that, to Commissioner Chapin's question, it seems that there is a mix of brick and then brick facades that have been stuccoed over time in the context.
Yeah, these are more to the left towards Bainbridge.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks. And Commissioner Bland, I think you had a question, although your hand is down now. No?
I muted myself partly because there's somebody or a lot of people speaking and it's very hard to hear the presentation. So I just noted that for whoever can mute. Passing comment.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Okay, I think we'll now move to public testimony. So we'll put the slide back up with the webinar information and turn to our Executive Director, Lisa Kersavage, to see if anyone is here to speak. If you are in the Zoom meeting already and wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand so Lisa can identify you.
Yes, and I will call people that signed up first to speak, and that includes Evelyn Collier, who has your hand raised too. Okay, Evelyn, I brought you in and unmuted you. If you could just state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes. You just need to unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, hi, this is Evelyn Collier from Community Board 3. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. You can hear me. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding the Brooklyn Community Board 3 resolution to support the proposed new building at 358 Malcolm X Boulevard, Brooklyn, New York. In general, the CB3 Landmark and Preservation Committee welcomes the infill of a vacant lot in which 3 affordable home ownership apartments will be made available to qualifying applicants. There will be, however, 8 committee comments and concerns. 1, the brick on the side and the back wall would be preferred, but the stucco can be considered to achieve the cost goal of the new affordable home ownership apartment. The brick alternate to historic clapboard seems appropriate, but a brick edge at the stucco corner should be expressed. The street level cornice is shown painted gray. It should match the cornice at the top of the building, which is darker. The applicant should address the configuration and proportion of the windows on the back of the building. They are not sized to relate to other townhouses in the area, and they will be visible from other historic buildings. I think they responded to that. There are no lintels expressed on the back of the building. The roof drain scuppers should be detailed to avoid staining of the stucco. A detail of how the brick meets the sidewalk on the street should be indicated. The committee would like more clarity about the air conditioning equipment, particularly to the street level. If window units are proposed due to budget concern, location and the configuration of any unit at the street level is requested. If exterior compressors are proposed, please indicate location and provide dunnage as may be required in the future. Air conditioning is a basic necessity for most users. An electric baseboard heat is an expensive option for homeowners in our area. Carefully coordinate all brick, paint, and stucco colors. The buildings on this block are of mixed yellow, sand color, golden tones, which can be complemented if the brick color is not too white or too flat a gray. Community Board 3 voted unanimously to support the project, 358 Malcolm X Boulevard, Brooklyn, New York. However, the board feels that the committee points of concern should be reviewed and addressed by LPC before finalizing the approved detail. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing further improvements to the project. Evelyn Collier, Chair, Anthony Busseret, Vice Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And I don't see any other hands raised, nor has anybody else signed up to speak.
All right, thank you. Rich, do we have any other written comments or testimony?
No, just the community board resolution.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to turn to the applicant team now and see if they would like to respond to the comments made by the community board, which generally, as I understood it, support the project, but had some concerns about the details, in particular how the brick and the stucco meet each other at the rear facade, at the corners, how the brick meets the street as it's sitting on a stone sill or water table, questions about the proportions of the rear windows and the lintels. So would you like to respond to some of those comments?
Jerry Caliendo, I believe what we'll do is analyze the comments and respond appropriately back to the commission and staff.
Okay, well, except that we're in the hearing now. So, now I think if your response is that you would work with the staff on the details, that's a response. But I think now is your opportunity to really explain to the commissioners what that intent is.
Okay. Laurie, do you want to go forward?
So let me see. One of the major concerns that we've had, this was brought up in the past, was that this is a HPD affordable housing program. So that was a major concern in terms of cost of this building, and HPD did bring that to our attention. We also brought it up to staff when we were back and forth in the proposed project. We will take into consideration working with staff to try to achieve something better on the rear facade. However, there aren't many public thoroughfares that the rear facade are actually visible. The only way people are going to see that rear facade is probably the one guy that's behind him. You can't see from around Bainbridge, and if you're standing around the corner on Chauncey Street, you could only see the top side of the building. It's not really visible. So in terms of getting HPD to spend extra money that's already part of a affordable housing program for the rear, I'm not sure if they're going to say okay. It's obviously their decision, but we can work at staff and try to compromise and come up with a solution that's going to work for everyone.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, do we have any final questions or comments? Questions at this point? Okay, not seeing any hands raised. I'm going to move to closing the hearing so we can begin our discussion, and I'm beginning to unmute everybody so we can call that vote. And Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is now closed and we'll move to our discussion. And as has been stated in the public testimony and by the applicant, this is an affordable housing project being presented to us. And so some of the decisions made here are with that in mind. I think for the commission, we'll look at it in terms of appropriateness, as we always do. And of course, that means looking at the front facade in one context and the rear facade in another context, and where we are typically a little more flexible where there is limited or lack of visibility. So I would also, as just in response to Commissioner Jefferson's earlier question, this particular site was never occupied by a flats building that matched the others. So the choice to make it its own freestanding individual building was based on that historic model of it being a different building that stood on its own. And so I think, we should talk about the general height, massing, composition, materials, and the relationship of all of those features to the historic district and to the historic condition. And in general, I do think that looking at this building, it does read as a historic flats or row house building. While the ground floor is residential, it makes an attempt to relate to some of the more commercial spaces at the ground floor. And the general proportions on the front facade and materials to be refined with staff, I think also could be very contextual. And I do think at the rear, while there are some probably important details as there would be on the front in terms of how the brick meets the stucco as was raised by the community board, I think that because of its limited visibility, the stucco is appropriate and could relate to the other parged rear facades within this context, and sort of as a material that happens over time and a material that the commission has previously approved. So in general, I think this is in a good place, but I definitely understand that there may be more detailed comments. So I'd like to go around the room and start with those details. And so Commissioner Bland, can I turn to
Sure.
you to start the discussion?
Sure. I think this is a very modest approach, as it probably should be, as for affordable housing. I'm glad to see that affordable housing is being put into this historic district, even if it's only 3 units. Those units count. I support the project as it is. I think that the applicant should work closely with staff, however, particularly on the details of the first floor on the facade toward the street. I think that's a tricky thing to do. But I accept that that's a challenge that should be met, just working with staff to get the details as close to something that looks like a storefront as possible. With regard to the rear, I quickly noted also the double windows as opposed to the tripartite window system. But given the floor plan and the need for a window in each, I have no problem with keeping it the 2 windows as proposed, particularly since it's so only partially visible. And the stucco is fine with me because it represents stucco that some of the other units have. So,
okay, thank you. And Commissioner Lutfi?
I also think this is it's a good proposal, and I'm also very happy that this affordable housing project is being placed here in a way that not only for the community, but in a way that kind of knits the buildings together on this street front. It's great that it's filling a gap. I think I appreciate all of the cost factors involved with an affordable housing project, but I also appreciate many of the comments by the community board. So to the extent that some of these can be addressed within the cost constraints. I think it would be great to work with staff on them. And some of them were quite detailed, all the way down to, the air conditioning, which may or may not be within our purview, but I appreciate the needs of the people who are going to occupy these units, and also, as I said, the keen interest by the community board. The community board also mentioned this idea of having the lower cornice be black to coordinate with the top cornice, and I think that could be quite handsome, and would recommend it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
This is my note. Good neighbor building, elevation works well with neighboring buildings. And it complements existing fabric. My only issue is just the back facade. I think 3 windows make sense to me, and it can be worked out within the plan that they have. So I recommend adding a 3rd window, just more light. You just need to spare with just 2 windows in the back.
Okay. All right, and and thinking about the limitations of their floor plan and trying to fit the apartments into this, would you be open to them working with the staff on either 3 windows or restudying the proportions of the rear windows?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thanks, great. Okay, and Commissioner Gustafson.
I agree completely with Commissioner Bland's comments, and the only thing that struck me as unusual was as a residential building in a row of buildings that have commercial on the first floor. The design of that first floor is a little unusual, and I think that Commissioner Lutfi's comment of agreeing with the community board on changing that component to black might actually make it look a little bit more in keeping with the storefronts, even though it is residential. So I would encourage them to work with staff on all of the community board's comments.
Okay, and Commissioner Holford Smith.
I agree with my colleagues. I think this is a very commendable application, and really glad to see some of the affordable housing being slotted into this empty space in the street. I agree with much of the comments from the community board, including the color of the ground floor cornice that was mentioned earlier. I think that would be much more successful in black. And I think working with staff, they could work out some, of the details of the storefront. Rear facade, I understand that the plan is kind of driving the 2-window scheme. I just wonder if they could perhaps make the windows a little bit larger to help compensate for the lack of 3 windows at the back. Okay. Otherwise, I think it's a good application. I support it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin?
Yes, I agree with the comments of my colleagues in general. I am very happy to see a new building for affordable housing. I think that the height, the massing materials are appropriate in general. The historic condition, I think having a lower building actually helps separate it as a new building from the historic building, so I'm comfortable with that. I think the stucco has a precedent in the neighborhood and is fine for the back. I would like to see the applicant work with the staff to consider the comments of the community board and the commissioners, in particular, where the brick meets the stucco in the dark cornice, I think, and some of the other comments I think were good. I just want to say I did not have a problem with the brick color presented. I just wanted to make sure that it did fit in well with the other buildings, which was just hard to tell from the presentation materials. And I do think there's one other thing I wanted to say. I'm sorry. I guess it just working with the staff. Oh, the windows. I agree with the windows in the back, that since we had larger windows in the other buildings, that if one could have the windows be somewhat larger, if 3 are not possible given the floor plan, then that is definitely desirable if they could work with the staff on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
Hey, I agree. It's a wonderful application, and I think generally a lot of the moves are correct. I think it's appropriate if the building is lower than the rest of the row. But I think that the color of the brick, they might look to, I mean, it looks like the color of the brick is trying to match the general tenor of the neighbors, that row to the right. I think that they could go away from that and do a red brick, do something else. I don't think that the style that they're making their building in is particularly well suited to the tan brick, but I think they could consider with staff moving away from something that's trying to blend with the neighbors to be more distinctive, just like their height is trying to be distinctive. I think that the comments of the community board related to the way the building meets the ground are appropriate, and they should try to work with staff to have some kind of base detail. I think that Jeannie's comments about the black cornice of the first floor are correct. I think the brick should return at least 2 feet on the side, which is a typical traditional detail. I think that there are no copings shown in the drawings, and copings are not only a traditional way to stop a building on the back and on the sides, which are visible, but they're generally required. So I would suggest that they use a precast coping similar to their sills. I would suggest that they use smooth sills and not the split face sills. The split face sills are kind of a typical giveaway for low-income housing. And a traditional building would never have that, and it costs nothing more to turn the sill around and have the smooth side showing. And I'm fine with the back with the 2 windows. I think if you were to go to 3 windows, you'd really have to have a 2 and a 1. It would be a kind of an asymmetrical arrangement, which would be okay. We do see that sometimes. I would leave that to staff and the applicant. I wouldn't want to. I think it's fine as is, though. That's it.
Okay. Commissioner Devonshire.
I agree with most of Michael Goldblum's comments. I think the applicant, it's a reasonable project, and I think they can work with staff to adhere to some of the community board comments, which were very thoughtful.
Thank you. All right, and Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, I agree with much of the comments. I think they really should work with the staff. I think the concern with the color on the facade, whatever approach they take, much of Commissioner Goldblum's comments were accurate, correct. I think that also the back rear window is hard to, when you try to split the bedroom and put an extra window in the middle. So I think as long as the proportion and there's enough light to come in, based on the community board comments, I think that the applicant should work closely with the staff on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think that we have a consensus to approve this building with the provision that they continue to work with the staff on many of the details and finishes. So I'll go ahead and make this motion and add that into it. Okay, so this is an application for a binding report in the Borough of Brooklyn, docket number LPC 20-03954, 358 Malcolm X Boulevard in the Bedford-Stuyvesant Expanded Stuyvesant Heights Historic District, a vacant lot. This is an application to construct a new building. And I note that the streetscape consists of late 19th century and early 20th century 2- and 3-story flats buildings with ground floor storefronts featuring brick cladding, stone trim, and metal cornices, as well as an altered late 19th century flats building featuring faux stone cladding and 2 one-story commercial buildings featuring concrete masonry unit, cast stone, and faux stone cladding. I recommend approval, finding that constructing a new building with a front facade aligning with its neighbors will help restore the continuity of the street wall, a unifying characteristic of streetscapes within this historic district, that the proposed height and massing of the building will be in keeping with such aspects of buildings typically found along avenues throughout the historic district, and will be a harmonious transition between the immediate neighboring buildings, which feature different heights, that the front facade's compositional organization, number of floors, proportions, cladding materials, and window configuration will replicate aspects of flats buildings found throughout the streetscape and historic district, thereby helping the building harmonize with its context, that the relatively simple details of the front facade elements, as well as the use of cast stone for the sills and fiberglass for the cornices, will maintain a level of articulation which is compatible with the streetscape, while also subtly acknowledging the modernity of the building. That the placement, size, and details of the ground floor woodwork will recall the organization and character of the piers and storefront infill found at the base of flats buildings within this streetscape. That the finishes of the facade, cladding, cornices, ground floor framing, and infill will be in keeping with the range of finishes historically and currently found within the streetscape, that the use of simply designed stucco-clad masonry for the side and rear facades and the solid to void ratio at the rear facade will be consistent with the simple detailing and utilitarian character of secondary facades of neighboring flats buildings, that the rear and side facades will only be partially visible from public thoroughfares, primarily within the context of the neighboring modern one-story building, and their simple design, stucco cladding, and light finish will help them remain a harmonious relationship and subordinate presence within these views, and that the building will not extend further into the rear yard than neighboring buildings or otherwise detract from the central green space, and that the proposed work will support the significant historic and architectural character of the streetscape and historic district. However, I find that many of the details and finishes are unresolved, and I recommend that the applicant work with the staff to refine the details and finishes at the storefront window and the storefront cornice, continue to work to refine the final brick color choice and the masonry details, particularly at the rear facade, at the base of the brick, the coping and the sills, and that the applicant continue to work with the staff to restudy the proportions of the rear windows. And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes, and just noting for the record that Commissioner Shamir Barron has temporarily left the hearing. With that, I'll call the vote. Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 10 in favor and none opposed. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
The next item is number 2. This is LPC 20-09453, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 1058, Lot 58, 199 St. John's Place in the Park Slope Historic District. A row house designed by William Gubbins and built in 1881. The application is to legalize the installation of windows without LPC permits.
And Commissioners, the applicant has joined the hearing. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
My name is Lucy Grosvenor.
Okay, so if you want to advance the slides and walk through your presentation, just click on the screen and use the arrow keys to move the slides. And there you go. And let us you may begin the presentation and explain the proposal to us.
Can
Okay.
you just ask the applicant to also unmute yourself if you were speaking?
Doesn't seem to be muted. Ms. Grosvenor, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, can you go ahead and speak now?
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Lucy Grosvenor. I am 71 years old. I bought the house at 199 St. John's Place in Park Slope in 1978. I was 28 years old then. At that time, the windows on the front of the house were wooden and very leaky. In 1981, I decided to upgrade them and chose a contractor from the Yellow Pages. In September of that year, 1981, Airflow Window Contracting Corporation capped and replaced the 3 windows on the second floor front. At that time, Airflow did not inform me that a landmarks permit was required to do the work. Subsequently, I hired Airflow to replace all the windows on the front of the house. My memory is that there were 3 separate projects, and at no time was I informed by Airflow that permits were required. As a new and young homeowner, I knew nothing about the regulations of the Landmarks Preservation Commission regarding upgrading windows. If I had been told by Airflow that regulation existed, I assure you that I would have complied. I also don't understand why Airflow did the work without the required permits 3 times. If Airflow Window Contracting Company had responsibly told me that permits were required for their work, I would not be here today. During the course of my 42 years as owner of 199 St. John's Place, I have refinanced the house several times. At no time have I been informed by the lending institutions that there were any violations relating to the building. Now, as I'm in the process of selling my home in order to secure my retirement, this matter has come to my attention. I hope that the Landmarks Preservation Commission will understand the situation and realize that no violation was ever intended. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I'll just note for the record that the notice of violation was issued on March 15th, 1990. So many years ago, and I think maybe prior to the time that our violations were attached to the title of the property. So today, if someone were refinancing, that violation would appear.
Sure.
Okay, any questions for the applicant?
Hi, everybody. Can anybody hear me? I tried to unmute myself earlier. Can I be heard?
Are you speaking on behalf of the applicant?
I am. My name is Mandeep Singh. I was actually supposed to present first, but technical difficulty on my end. I couldn't unmute and didn't work. May I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mandeep Singh, project manager and expediter, representing Mr. Lucy Grosvenor, who just spoke. We're here today to request legalization of window installation done without LPC permits. Slide 1 here, we're looking at the front view of the premises with showing metal windows and metal paneling. If you look closely, hopefully my mouse is moving. If you look closely, you can see that some of the metal paneling originally installed, it was brown, but if you see there's some discoloration here and there is fading that has transpired. My slide's not moving.
Mr. Singh, if you could just use your mouse to click on the screen, then you can advance the slides that way or using the arrow keys.
Okay, got it. All right. Slide 2, we are looking at the historical map and location of the property. The property is located between 7th and 8th Avenue, Park Slope Historic District. The arrow here represents the general location of the property. Slides 3, 4, and 5, we are going to be looking at the historical photographs of the premises. If you look at picture 1 and picture 2, we have 199. These are 2 pictures divided in 2 and make 1 picture together. Shown here is 199 St. John. If you look closer, you can see the original brick mold and wood molding. Some deterioration can be noticed on the brick molding. This is a picture of the historic tax lot. Once again, we have the front view. This is a much better view compared to the previous photograph. You can see that there is discoloration on the metal paneling. Originally, they were brown. If you notice on the first floor, they're brown metal paneling going all around. This is a streetscape view compared to the block as a whole. You could see that the premises sits well and blends in very nicely. Here, once again, we have the close-ups of the metal paneling. There is some discoloration here. There is some minor work that can be done to restore the building to its original texture. This is the top second floor. And then we have the top floor showing the cornice. In context to the precedents, if you look at the picture to the right, 187 St. John's Place with metal paneling and windows, we were not able to get a proper photograph of the entire building up for 187. There was a blockage with a tree there, but there are buildings on the block that do have metal paneling and metal windows. Same thing here for 189 St. John's Place with metal windows and metal paneling. And then you have 205 St. John's Place with metal windows and metal paneling. And that is the end of our presentation. So as of now, my final statement is, if you look at everything, we do have metal windows on the premises. And it is our understanding that we do have minor work that does need to be done, and we are willing to partake that work immediately and hopefully resolve the violation that has been issued. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant? Okay, and I just have one question. So the windows that are there now are approximately 30 years old. Is that right?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And did you investigate what's underneath the paneling, exposing a little bit of what's underneath to understand if the brick mold is there?
I did not know, but we did look into the mechanics of the windows. All the windows do function properly. There's no issue with any of the up and down sliders and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have a couple of questions. Commissioner Bland, please go ahead.
Well, I think you've asked my question. Is the windows are 30 years old, often with a relatively modern window, which I would say they don't last much longer than that. So I was wondering if they're still in good condition. Secondly, the metal panning is what's most egregious, it seems to me at least. And your question about what's behind it, or potentially what could wood molding be put over it or something like that, just a question. I'm sort of trying to figure out with the applicant, is there a way of fixing these so that they would be appropriate as opposed to wholesale denial?
Well, that is, may I? I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
That is what we're seeking, because if we could go back and we'll work with staff, and if we could be recommended, instead of doing a complete window replacement, we could obviously look into the replacement of a brick mold and bring forth the historic look of the front facade. That would really be helpful for us as well.
To remove the paneling and replace it, or to expose?
We would remove the paneling, expose what's happening there. If it is repairable, we would obviously, once we do our initial probe, we will figure it out. And whichever brick mold needs to be replaced, we would provide samples if need be and do a complete restoration for the brick mold.
Okay, and thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
I know this is not a particularly germane question necessarily to our hearing, but nevertheless, I assume this is being done in the context of a sale. I mean, you mentioned that Ms. Grosvenor mentioned that it was being done in the context of a sale. Do we know if the purchaser is planning on living in it as is, or is the purchaser planning on renovating it?
I do not. I think Ms. Lucy Grosvenor could answer that question much better than I could.
To the best of my knowledge, the buyers plan to live in it as is.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Commissioner Lutfi.
I think, Sarah, this is a question for you and the staff. So if this violation was issued in 1991?
1990, yeah.
1990, I understand it's coming before us now because there's a sale, but why haven't we seen it before now?
So I'm going to turn to John Weiss, our Deputy Counsel, who can speak to the enforcement process at this particular property. John?
Yes, we did issue the violation in 1990, and we actually reissued the violation, I believe, around 2003, 2004 at some point. Sometimes when we have these violations, there is no further enforcement action once the violation has been issued until there is a sale or a refinance. And that appears to be what has happened here. It was only when the sale is coming up and the title search is done that this violation is picked up and is then being addressed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
And again, that was sort of when we were able to attach the violations to the title. That's when we were able to address many of these violations because of refinancing and sales. It now comes up and it gives us that opportunity.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? Okay, so let's see if we have any public testimony. We'll turn to Lisa and see if anyone has signed in. And again, anyone who would like to speak should raise their hand at this time so we can identify you.
And we had one person sign up to speak and had her hand raised, which is Kelly Carroll, Historic District Council.
Hello, okay. Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. I just want to note that we reviewed this as if this project were done yesterday. We didn't know that this was a 30-year-old violation, and so no wonder the windows look that old, but I'm going to read the testimony as rewrote it with the knowledge I had at the time. Illegal windows make quite a statement, and the photos in this application make a terrific case for why consulting with the Landmarks Commission is necessary when working on designated buildings. It is unclear how or why this happened, as Park Slope has been designated a historic district for some time now. But again, now I understand how and why this happened. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly. And I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
All right, and Rich, do we have a resolution from the community board or any other written testimony?
In addition to a written testimony from HTC, we do have a letter from Community Board 6 recommending denial.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to turn to the applicants and see if they'd like to respond or make any final comments before we move into our discussion.
My final comments are this. I know we were denied based on, can I hear what community board said exactly? On what basis did they deny?
Do they have it in their resolution, the resolution part of the testimony?
I have here, application was disapproved by a vote of 8 in favor, 0 opposing. Reasons for disapproval are as follows. The color of the window casings do not match and are non-historically appropriate in color or profile. And the second floor windows do not have the arc that is evident on the adjacent property and in the historical photos.
So based on those conditions, if we were to correct those conditions, would we be able to remove this violation? That is what we propose. If you guys allow, we can move forward.
To remove the panning and repair and or replace the brick mold as needed. Yes. Is that what you're suggesting? Okay, so we'll discuss that in our discussion in a moment. Okay, commissioners, any final questions? Okay, and I'm going to start to unmute all of you so we can call a vote to close the hearing. So Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And so this is an application to legalize the windows as installed. But throughout the hearing today, the discussion today, the applicant has also suggested that they modify the windows that were installed without permits by removing the panning and repairing the underlying brick mold or replacing in kind as needed. So as we discuss that, we can certainly think about both options. So I'll start at the head of the table. Commissioner Devonshire, would you like to start?
Sure. All of the narrative of the history of this aside, I think the most egregious issue here is the existence of the panning. In my opinion, what has to happen here is the panning has to be removed. The condition of the brick mold, which I'm sure is a flat with a cork and bead, which is actually now commonly available at places like Dykes Lumber, many other lumber suppliers. The condition of the brick mold needs to be assessed, and the brick mold needs to be replaced either or restored or replaced in kind with a new brick mold that matches the original. I think the sash can remain if need be, because it really seems like the panning is the egregious killer here. And I think that would make it approvable for me. I agree with Fred, the sash is going to have to be replaced in the relatively near future in any case, but perhaps the new owner can deal with that. But for now, there's a violation. It's a long-standing violation. The brick mold needs to be dealt with.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Chen?
Give me a meal first. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree with Commissioner Devonshire. I think that the correction needs to be made, and as applicant attested to, the songs be corrected too.
Okay, Commissioner Bland?
Yes, I'm in agreement now. I think this is the way to go. I just want to make the point that when we deny, which I think and hope we're not going to do here today, when we do, we're never doing it, I don't think, for punitive reasons to an owner, even though sometimes it's hard to not think that way. It's really about the building that before us and the integrity of the landmark. But in this case, the story was compelling nonetheless, but I think now just thinking about the building, the panning, if it's replaced, would be acceptable. Again, working closely with staff.
Great. And Commissioner Lutfi?
I'm in agreement, even though I find the whole thing a little upsetting. And I hope the new owners are going to replace the windows in a way that respects the integrity of the building and the block. It's a very centrally located block within the district.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
I defer to staff. My gut feeling is denial, but I'll go halfway and let the staff work with them and come to a solution.
Okay. Commissioner Gustafson?
I agree with Commissioner Devonshire's proposal.
Commissioner Holford Smith?
I agree with restoring or replacing the brick mold and allowing the sash to remain at this time.
Okay, and Commissioner Chapin?
Yes, I agree with the previous commissioners, with Commissioner Devonshire initially about removing the panning and replacing with the brick mold, or else repairing the brick mold if that's possible. One other thing I'd like to add is the applicant showed other, I think, buildings on the street that where metal panning had been used, and if the staff could look into whether we have an existing violation on any of those other buildings that may not be put before us, perhaps we would at this time want to, try to get some of those owners to come in and deal with their issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and Commissioner Goldblum.
I have to vote for denial on this. I think that if this were coming before us as a presentation that was not in the context of a violation, we would certainly require that the windows be either wood or metal clad wood with proper moldings. I think we would definitely require that the second floor windows remain arched. Tops have an arched top, as the historic window shows. And while the panning is a good solution from an aesthetic point of view, I think it's unfair to the many applicants who come before us all the time wanting to put in aluminum windows, and the staff tells them on a regular basis, oh, you got to put in wood. I mean, I feel bad that the applicant got a bad contractor back in the 80s or 90s, but you know, in fairness to the thousands of applicants who come before us and ask for the same deference, I think the only fair thing to do would be to ask them to change the windows to those that would be appropriate.
Okay, and one thing I will just add is that under the rules, the staff is allowed to approve aluminum sashes in row houses that historically had 1/1 double hung windows. And that is because in the 1/1 double hung configuration, the portion of the sash was historically very simple, and it was the brick mold that was the most decorative part of the window. So already at staff level, the staff can approve of a metal sash with a wood, either restoring or replacing the wood brick mold in a square-headed window. So here it's the arched window that's the piece that wouldn't meet the rules for this kind of proposal. But in some cases, we have also legalized the flat sash behind an arched brick mold. In this case, I think many people have noted that these particular windows are so old that they probably will need to be replaced soon. So we can put something in the motion that reflects that this wouldn't necessarily be approved as a replacement. So why don't I go ahead and make this motion as well with some of these comments. So I'm going to start with, this is an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, docket number 20-09453, 199 St. John's Place in the Park Slope Historic District, a row house designed by William Gubbins and built in 1881. This is an application to legalize the installation of windows without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits. And I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the finish of the windows is in keeping with the finishes historically found at buildings of this type, style, and age throughout the historic districts. That the windows match the historic windows in terms of the 1/1 configuration and double hung operation, and that the replacement windows installed within the original masonry openings do not preclude the future installation of windows that will match the historic windows in terms of configuration, operation, materials, details, and finish. However, I find that the square panning detracts from the window and does not match the historic details, and that the configuration of the second floor windows does not recall the arched configuration, and therefore I recommend that the panning be removed and that the wood brick molds be either restored or replaced in kind as necessary. And I also note that while legalizing the square-headed sash at the arched opening, this is with the understanding that the dark finish will help it to recede and does not set a precedent for future, and understanding that the windows will deteriorate soon and not set a precedent for future proposals for this property or other similar properties. Okay. Commissioner Devonshire, would you second that motion?
I will. Second.
Thanks. Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes, I'm just stating for the record that Commissioner Shamir Barron has re-entered the hearing. Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I did not understand that.
That's
Nay.
no.
Nay. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Nay.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 9 in favor and 2 opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, so that's approved with those modifications, and we'll move to the next item.
Next item is number 3. This is LPC 20-08666, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 526, Lot 66, 186 Sullivan Street in the McDougal-Sullivan Gardens Historic District. A Greek Revival style house built in 1850 and later altered with neo-federal style elements in 1920 by Francis Y. Johans and Maxwell Hyde. The application is to construct a rooftop addition, install HVAC units, and raise chimney.
And Commissioner, the applicants have joined the meeting. And if you can please state your name for the record, and you may begin the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Armal Lagauder. I'm an architect. I'm representing the owners of 186 Sullivan. They actually bought the property in 2017. We have been working with them since early 2018, doing a series of renovations and restoration of the outside of the building. The building is located on Sullivan Street. It backs up onto the Common Garden. It's the eastern side of the McDougal-Sullivan Garden Historic District. We're near it's the building in pink on the bleaker end of the Sullivan Street side of it. We're the second to last building. These are just simply the little teardrops in here are the keys for the photographs in it for your booklets that you would have seen before. Our lot is 22 feet wide, 100 feet deep. The back half of our building is only about half the lot. There's a 25-foot private area that lines the interior side of the garden. And you can, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go forward, but the common area between it is a 50-foot wide garden that runs the north-south dimension of the interior of the block. Our building is the blue building in the center photograph. These are 2 shots when we first started working on the project in 2018 that show the view up and down Sullivan Street. The one on the left is looking back towards Houston. The one on the right is looking up from slightly down the block towards the Bleecker Street end. The back of the building, and these are also from when we first started work, you can see the buildings. These are just for context, really, along both sides of the garden. The garden has quite a bit of vegetation in it, some fairly large trees. Most of the buildings are very consistent along it. They're on the Sullivan Street side. They're all pretty much so 22 feet wide, all a uniform height of about 45 feet. The buildings along the McDougal Street side are a little bit smaller. They're also a little bit shorter because grade falls down from east to west along the interior side of the garden. Our building originally was this in the center, which had a, it doesn't show much here. It's a light green facade. It looks more cream, at least on my screen, than it is in reality. The top of the buildings are basically just flat roof structures. There was some mechanical equipment here originally. This is the existing conditions. You can see in the background on our slide here, this is the adjoining building, 184 Sullivan Street. There is an existing penthouse structure there, which has an arbor along the garden side of it. It's set back slightly from the rear facade. This actually was the impetus for our clients wanting to do what we're here today to present. Our building is the area in the center here. It's flanked by 2 chimneys. This is existing mechanical equipment. So you can kind of see it. I'm standing on 188 Sullivan to take these photographs, just to give you context. The proposed addition that we would do, or that we're proposing doing, is a flat roof structure with a skylight in the center of it. The structure would be on the street side. It's 9'6" high above the cornice. I'm sorry, 9 feet high above the cornice along the street side, 9'6" high at the midpoint of the roof. And because the roof is sloping off, it's 10'6" on the back side from the deck that we would be putting in. This is a mock-up that we did about 3 weeks ago using netting to show what generally the form of it would be. You can see the structure is actually slightly shorter than the building adjacent to the addition that was made at 184 Sullivan, adjacent to it. The two pieces that are fairly tall are the chimneys that would need to be extended to do this. The chimney actually on the east side should have been extended when 184 Sullivan did their work by code. I'm not quite sure why it wasn't done, but we would take care of that as part of our work as well. This is simply what happens when you mask it. The chimneys are, as you can see, the largest part of this. Our addition would be set back 11 feet from the garden edge of the building, which again is basically what the addition next to us is. That actually makes it align with the interior face of the stairwell, which we would be continuing up to this, the original stair inside of the building. From the street, there is no visibility of the mock. There's nothing here. This was taken right after the shots on the roof were done. In the garden, that's what it would look like. You can see the top of the addition at 184 Sullivan Street adjacent to it. We're no taller than that. The chimneys are the parts that really show. This pergola structure, arbor structure on 184 Sullivan Street, as you move away from it a little bit, begins to obscure it from view down at the southern end of the common garden. This is what happens with the mesh netting on it. So you can see our building form. It's a little hard to get real definition out of it, but is basically the same height. It would be a different color. It would be all cream, but the same height basically as the building adjacent to it. And as I said, the dominant elements are the chimneys. The only place this is possibly visible from the street is on the bleaker end of McDougal. There is one small piece of one-story building that's actually beyond the northern end of the townhouses that make up the McDougal-Sullivan Historic District. And that is right here. It's, we're not even really sure, I'm not sure of the address because it's just beyond it. We call it 98 McDougal Street, but it's really, I think, an extension of the building on Bleecker. Right through here, you can barely see a little bit of form here. What you can actually see, here's the shot of the mock-up. You can barely see it through the trees here. This is with the netting on it, and then we rendered it to do this. You can only really see this if you stand with your back against the restaurant entrance here. I think it's JG Mellon. If you move further forward, because of perspective, it comes out of view. So, and it's only for a brief moment as you're walking down the street. So there's not a lot of presence of it on the street. The bigger, I'm sorry, this is what the drawings for it look like. So here is our street facade. We've added in the building at 184 Sullivan Street just for context to give it some, comparison to what we're doing. This area to the left on the street elevation is the building at 184 Sullivan, which I believe was done in like 2002, 2004. It's hard to find documentation for it. Sorry, I'm sorry, glitches here. This is a view that shows the section through our building. This is the existing mechanical equipment that's there. Here is an existing chimney. There's another existing chimney. This is the fence that makes up the roof deck for 184 Sullivan. So our building is everything in front of this. This stuff really is all just context in the background, and you can see it in plan here. They're existing. There are 2 skylights, which we would remove. Our addition would basically go in this footprint where you can see it here. the little dashed lines on it. There is existing dunnage and an existing piece of air conditioning equipment, a air-cooled condensing unit that we would relocate as part of our plan. The new work would involve putting in, this would be the penthouse structure that we would be doing. That is literally a continuation of the stair below, and so we're really in line with it. We tried to get as best we could the dimensions for the building adjacent to it without trying to violate going on their property, getting as close to his dimensions as we can. Essentially, they're doing the same thing. Their structure actually has to follow the same thing. I think it was an original bulkhead that they had that they expanded, but that's where the locations for these are set. Our street facade, as you can see, is very slightly shorter in height than their under eave cornice line. And so our building is actually 9'6" on the, I'm sorry, it's, I think it's only 9 feet on the street side. It's 9'9" to the ridge at the midpoint of the slope. I'm sorry, it's 9'0" on the street side. It's 9'9" because the roof is dropping down slopely, and on the back side, from our deck, it's 9'6" high. The sloping of the roof makes it a little bit complicated to give, dimensions, because at any point along there, the ground plane is dropping. So I have to always keep checking my notes to make sure I'm saying the right value for it. It is set back from the rear facade 11 feet, which is basically in line with the building adjacent to it. This is just the garden side elevation of it. We would be, as they have next to us, putting in ours would be a decorative metal rail painted black with a bronze cap. The exterior of the building would be stucco. This is just a roof plan that's showing the fire department egress, which would be up and over the roof. As I mentioned, there's a skylight in the center over the the studio room that we would be doing, and the area on the garden side would be a deck. The area on the street side would be left for mechanical equipment, and we'd be putting a green roof on the areas that don't have the access way for the fire department above it. In terms of section, this is what it looks like there. As you can see, there's virtually no possibility of seeing it from Sullivan Street because of the width of the street and the height of the building. The buildings are from Sullivan to McDougal are about 100 feet wide. As I mentioned, there's a common garden between them that's 25 feet deep. I'm sorry, there's a private garden off of each of the buildings that's 25 feet deep, a common garden in the middle that's 50 feet deep, and the buildings are 100 feet. The ground slightly falls down from east to west along the garden. You step down actually to go to the areas here before you go into the buildings along McDougal. The street elevation is a little bit lower. This is the single story piece at 98 McDougal that we showed the photographs of before. And so that's the sight line. So what you're really seeing is just this little part of the building up at the top. This is what, oh, the colors are so bright on this. This is our street facade. The proposed addition would be a cream colored stucco, a natural stucco, cement stucco with a limestone cap. All of the metal work on it would be copper, and we would allow it to patinate, so it'd be verdigris. The rear facade is currently approved by Landmarks to be painted a kind of cream color, similar to the color of the facade of Babbo Restaurant on Waverly Place. The new cap that we would put above here to capture the end of the deck would be made out of bluestone with a metal railing on it. The stucco is cream colored. The trim would be painted wood, painted white to match the windows below. The limestone cornice above it, and then any of the metal work would be copper. The chimneys are currently brick. We were simply proposing elevating them. They need to be 3 feet by code above the anything within 6 feet laterally, so we would be elevating it. This one, as I mentioned before, really should have been done by the neighbors adjacent to it when their proposal was done originally, but it wasn't. So we would be rectifying that now. And these are just the material palettes for what we're doing. The brick would be a red brick. The stucco would be Mohawk Manor white, which is a kind of soft cream color. The limestone would be a dove white. It's a Valders limestone. The metal work would be painted black for the railing and for the skylight, and the cornice and the other sheet metal work would end up being verdigris. So the issue here, I really think, involves the garden itself. And so just to give a little context to it, there are right now 4 rooftop additions on the McDougall garden. You can see it in the view of the left. And this is actually a line drawing based on the Sanborn plan imposed on a Google Earth map so that you can see it. So the green blotches through the shaded drawing are actually showing the tree cover. So it does have a fair amount of trees in it. You're also seeing what kind of looks like, I don't know, staining, if you will, on the building tops. That's all the equipment on the roofs. And it's also showing the footprint of the existing additions on the rooftops at 88, 90, and 94 McDougall, and at 184 Sullivan. Our building is shaded in pink again. The view looking north through the center of the garden shows, generally speaking, the context. Our building is very hard to see. It's down here. The closer you get to it, it doesn't get much more readily available, but you'll see some other shots of it as we go along. Just for context, we did a 3-dimensional model based on information we could find online that gave us a view of the garden at the interior. I'm sorry, we misspelled McDougall. I don't know how that happened. Sorry about that. The only rooftop addition that actually is fairly prominent in this is the one at 88 and 90 McDougall, and you can see it in orange on the image in the upper right-hand corner. And we put a model of ours, and what you would see for ours, as I mentioned originally, are the chimneys. And so the rest of it, the one at 184 Sullivan, really, if you're standing at the ground level in the garden, you really wouldn't see that. So there's not a really prominent view of it from anywhere that we can tell at grade level. We went through then and just did an analysis of how things looked. So what you're seeing here is a view of the rooftop from the plan that we did before that shows the locations of the rooftop additions down below, and the 3 at 88, 90, and 94. And then as best we could knit together facades of the gardens along, this is the McDougall Street side of the property. So as you move down, you can see there's a very consistent cornice line throughout. We tried to align it through the images. There are chimneys that in some cases are fairly prominent. This one has actually a quite tall chimney, plus then quite tall flue pipes above it. And when you move down, you can see then the addition at 88 and then 90, they actually abut one another here. And then if you look carefully, you'll see the addition over here from 180, I'm sorry, at 94. It's this little sloped piece behind it. In a couple of cases, there are railings along here because people have used them as roof decks. In a couple of cases, there are also parapet piers that define one versus another. So there's a little bit of variety between them, but overall, it presents a very consistent facade with a couple of things above the cornice line. Along the Sullivan Street side, you can see much the same thing. This is our building here, which is currently under construction. So you come along at 184 from standing directly across. It's very hard to see much of this actual building. You can see little bits of it back in there. What you really can see is the arbor and the railing on the front. But then if you continue down, you see other roof chimneys that are down further. You see this railing that's along here. So there are already existences of rooftop additions, rooftop work up there. So that's where things start breaking down. This is a little bit more detailed information about the additions at 88 and 90. The addition here is, they're set back about 12 feet from what we can tell from Google Earth. There's no way to really for us to get up there and measure it. But this is really what we can do off of Google Earth to get a plan view of it. And that's what it looks like. This was taken about 2 months ago, just before the trees really went in bloom. This was taken 3 weeks ago. You can see actually the tree cover already fills it in quite a bit. This is a dark brown metal, basically pair of greenhouse-like structures. They have a sloped roof on the one on 90 and a flat roof on the one on 88, and then a fence with some planting in it along the garden facade. The one at 94, which was done before designation, but you can see it. It's basically almost like a little, almost like a cupola. It's very, very small. It's only 8 by 11 as far as we can tell, and the stair comes right up into it. So it's just basically a perch. You can see the pitched roof on it. It's down in the back. It's very heavily tree covered, so you can't really see much of it. There is a very large chimney with a very large chimney pot immediately adjacent to it on the left of the center slide. Next to us is 184 Sullivan. This is the largest of the structures. This is the original stair that comes up, and this becomes the facade of the building running across here. There's a taller mass right behind it that is the actual, I guess it's the room that they really occupy. Along the western side facing the garden is this arbor structure, which is fairly noticeable. The structure itself comes out right to the face of the roof in this zone. And this is a view. I did the bad thing of walking across their roof to 182 Sullivan to take this photograph, which I'm sure somebody would be angry about if they really knew it. And then this is what we're proposing. So our addition would essentially match the height of the one next to it. It would not have any pitched roofs. It would simply be a flat roof structure. We're set back 11 feet. I'm not quite sure how they got theirs to be 12 because we're all following the same staircase. I could have mismeasured it, but that's the way we can kind of document where things are. This is what our building would look like in relation to theirs. And as best we could do based on the mock-up and doing a little bit of work with rendering inside of it, I believe this is what we have. I must say I'm a little leery because when we do the stuff on site, it looks like we're really carrying this line, but as best I can tell, this was an accurate representation of it. And so I thank you. That's really what we have to offer. And if I'd be delighted to talk about any questions anyone has.
Okay, thank you. I think we do have some questions. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Gustafson.
This question may very well be for our staff. The accretions on 184, the pergola and that addition, were those approved by us? And are any of the other visible rooftop additions on the garden side approved by us?
The building directly adjacent was approved by the commission, maybe not quite 20 years ago. I know of at least one other one on the block that was approved by the commission about 10 years ago. I think on the opposite side of the garden, and the others are either smaller bulkheads or I think predate the district. But there aren't many. There may be 3 that are kind of bigger than just a stair bulkhead, and then 1 or 2 other stair bulkheads.
So we even approved that pergola.
The commission approved the addition next door, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Holford Smith. Oops.
My question is regarding what you're seeing in this rendering. You mentioned that at the rear face of the rear rooftop deck, there's bluestone. Could you explain what that is, what that detail would look like? And is it flush with the face of the brick of the original building, or is it set back?
It's set back slightly because the roof is pitched, and we're not trying to just hurt the. Let me see if I can go back a few slides, if it'll let me go back. Let's see. Can I zoom this? Will it allow me to do that? Do you know?
I can take it out of full screen. If you just give me a moment.
Okay. It would be easier if I could zoom in on it to show someone what it would look like.
So here you can use the,
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Zoom keys.
So I just need to do this. So I want to, let me just see. I want it to go to like 200%. Let's do that. This is going to take a minute to get to because this is also cumbersome working like this. We have, because of the drainage for the roof as a whole, we're trying not to disturb the roof. We really make a penetration in it and then work the drainage to go around the building in a kind of complicated way. And then we allow this to drain underneath it. And we're following what was done at the building 184. They built a kind of structure, if you will, right along the parapet edge above the cornice. There is actually some trim that we're not showing in our section here because it's rather hard to measure it at the moment. But there is, you know, a cornice trim and a gutter and stuff outboard of this line where my cursor is here. We are simply building an elevated, almost like a pedestal, if you will, that runs the full width of it, that ties into the one that's on 184 Sullivan. And we would face this in bluestone. What they've faced, they have a bluestone cap on theirs. They've faced it in wood. And if you would like, I can try and upload a photograph of what that looks like. But we were trying to simply match what's there to continue it. And that, so it's what they have there. We match the height of it. They have a bluestone cap that actually is defining the base for their metal railing going to the south. So we were simply trying to continue the bluestone cap to make it look, you know, like it was a feature of the building, providing a slight trough underneath it so that water is not impeded with it. So it's still running down through the gutter. And then putting, instead of wood like they have adjacent to us, bluestone on the face of it, because we thought it would actually weather better and also be more in keeping with looking like part of the, you know, the cornice line of the building. It could be brick, but you know, all of the brick below is painted. And it seemed like the horizontal line at this point was really the demarcation line. We have no problem at all with pushing this back further either. It's just, we were aligning it with the one adjacent to it because it seemed like that already was the context we were dealing with. There is nothing going towards the north from here. There's simply the parapet wall that divides, you know, the party wall that divides the two buildings. And if you'd like, I can try and show you a photograph of this in the existing context. I mean, I'd have to do the same thing of blowing it up if that would be helpful.
I'm looking at the photograph on page 3. I can blow it up here. And it's a little hard to see, but I see what you're talking about with the recessed.
Now the side of that wall that faces this property is indeed faced in brick. The side of the wall that faces the garden is not. The side of the wall facing the garden is simply faced in wood. I'm not quite sure why that was done. It, to be honest, is not in the world's greatest shape at the moment, which is why when looking at it, we thought it would be better to do it out of something more durable, just because the wood, you know, 20 years, it's starting to look a little ratty.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so I think right now we'll move to public testimony. And if you're in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your hand. Oh, before we, no, I thought I saw a raised hand from a commissioner, but we'll go to public testimony. We can ask more questions afterwards. So if you're a member of the public and wish to testify in this item, please raise your hand.
And nobody signed up to speak on this item, and I don't see any raised hands, so I don't think we have any testimony.
Okay, thanks. And Rich, do we have any written testimony or community board resolution?
We have a resolution from Community Board 2 recommending approval.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Jefferson, did you have a question? I saw your hand go up a couple of times. Did you want to?
Just a question of architectural intent. If you could go to the final slide presentation, the final image, of your presentation?
I don't think I have control anymore, do I? Yeah.
I'm curious about your intentions in terms of symmetry and framing. So I see the fireplace as dominant framing devices, and I see the lower portion symmetrical, but I see the new volume put in not symmetrical. And I'm curious about what were you aiming for? What am I not seeing? Architectural intent.
You know, what's interesting about it is the rear facade of this building. If you go back and you look at the one that actually shows, if you go back one prior to this, I think it might be easier to see.
You still have control of the application.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Thank you. Let me find the one that's the rendering. There is nothing symmetrical or truly balanced about the rear of the, whoops, I went too far, about the rear of this building. I mean, as you go up and you look at it, things are all a little wacky. And it has to do with the fact that, I mean, this is really not our change. This was done by a former owner years ago, and it was approved. On this floor, there are two windows, one side that are kind of somewhat balanced as they go up, but this one dances around and it's a different size. And when we got to the top, we really actually, I don't often do this, but we really designed this one from the inside out instead of from the outside in. The chimneys are existing and they are not something that we treated as a design element, primarily because if we had our druthers, they wouldn't be there, but they are so close to what we're doing in the facade. They sit right immediately on the western side of the stair. We have no choice but to include them in the composition, and they simply define the party wall. Because the stair is on the left, we simply chose to try and treat our addition as a pavilion, assuming that it's set far enough back from the rear facade that it actually disengaged from the facade. So we're really thinking of the position that this is the existing context down below, and that what we're doing is far enough back that you don't really see much of it. And when I'm on site looking at it, I can go back and show you the mock-up footage. You don't really see, the only thing you can really see, and I'm standing as far as I can with my back against the fence of the the common gardens dividing line to the private gardens on the McDougal side, you really can only see the very top of these. Yeah, if I had my druthers, I would have tried to align it with this, but the room is essentially on the top, a 16-foot square. And because it's a square, it just seemed odd to throw the windows and the doors all the way to the southern edge for a symmetry with something that I thought you would barely make. We tried to make the stair part as dumb and as mute as possible. So we actually articulated it to emphasize that this part was really like a pavilion. So this is the square reading, which shows both in plan. And let me get back to it. So we made a very slight fold here. So this is really the stair, and we just centered the doors in it, assuming that this setback really would provide the separation so that you wouldn't necessarily judge the the window placement below with the door placement above. The stucco too was consciously made not to be the painted brick, so that it was similar and kind of light in feeling, but not identical, because we weren't trying really to continue the facade below.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I think we can move to our discussion then, and I'm going to begin to unmute everybody for the vote. And Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
I so motion.
And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we'll start our discussion, and Commissioner Jefferson, since you were just asking a question and listening to the response, perhaps you'd like to start on this. It's adjacent to an addition that the commission previously approved. and obliquely has very limited visibility, but standing directly behind it, it has some visibility from within the rear yard, no visibility from a public thoroughfare, right?
Right, and my comments were the visibility from the rear yard was one, and I thought that we were too dominant. I mean, regardless of what the intent was, the chimney becomes a framing device, and perhaps it should be softened. It should not be a powerful brick element. I thought the addition should be lower, and I thought the color of the addition should be more roof-like rather than as dominant as it is. So those were my essential comments. Either it becomes addition at the top becomes symmetrical, that is, you move the skylight, or you make the chimneys less dominant and keep what you have. Those are my comments.
Okay, so I think the raising of the chimneys are required by code, but one could do, the pipe flues and rather than brick chimneys. That may be a way to think about that. Okay, and Commissioner Lutfi? Okay, I think she's still. All right. Commissioner Lutfi? I'm going to go the other, oh, there you are, okay.
Myself. So I agree with Commissioner Jefferson. I think it would be helpful if the penthouse were a neutral color. And I mean, I also think if there's something that can be done to lower those flues, it would be great. And I think the top of this should be just flat so that we could take off a little bit of height. And that's it.
I'm sorry, okay. And Commissioner Bland.
Yeah, my comments are more or less similar, but maybe slightly different. We can't change the height of the chimneys, but we can change their prominence as architectural elements. And I think, Sarah, you just said they could be metal flues or something painted out, as we often do at the top of buildings. Secondly, this new penthouse, which I think is elegant in its own way, should not be the same color as the back of the building to de-emphasize its association with the original facade, to de-emphasize that. And furthermore, I would put that additional band across the top, which aligns with the current cornice in the back, I would push that back a couple of feet at least, and therefore the fence as well. And let me just comment that I've always wondered why people so wanted to live in the McDougal-Sullivan area. Having never known about that garden, now I see the ultimate donut. This is the most magnificent donut ever. So now I get it. It's beautiful. Yeah. So this will be an appropriate addition, I think, as long as it can just be de-emphasized a bit.
Read the appraisal.
Okay, Commissioner Chen.
Read the appraisal.
Yeah,
be a normal.
I agree with Commissioner Bland's comment. I think that we should de-emphasize the chimney, and as the chair said correctly, and I agree with most of the comments that the Commissioner Bland said.
Okay. And Commissioner Devonshire?
I agree with Commissioner Bland. I think the chimneys can be truncated and have flue extensions. The color should be neutral, and I think that band and the fence can be pushed back.
Okay, and Commissioner Goldblum?
I'm with Team Fred, and I think that I was actually okay with it as is, but I think that good suggestions, make it better. I mean, in general, I gotta say, it was a very meticulous and well crafted presentation, very thoughtful. And I think in a funny way, the comments are pointing in the direction of making it a little bit less of a statement, perhaps, a little simpler and a little bit more recessive. And I think that would be a good thing.
Okay. And Commissioner Chapin?
I agree with the comments of previous commissioners, and also it is nice to discover this is a very little known garden in the city, and as one who lives in a district characterized by interior gardens, why it's lovely to see it. But I do agree with the comments about minimizing the rooftop additions appearance and also the chimneys, as has been suggested.
Okay, and Commissioner Holford Smith?
I agree with previous comments from the commissioners regarding the chimneys, cutting down the brick to just have flues extend up. I was originally concerned about that bluestone band, but if we push it back, I think it will be fine. Allowing the back face original build to read better, and a neutral color for the stucco. Otherwise, I think it's very appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Gustafson.
Actually, I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you joined us. Commissioner Shamir Baran.
Yeah, no problem. I'm in agreement with most of the comments, though I think that the chimneys as in the brick as described would be fine here. And I would actually think that I'd prefer to them to the metal flues.
Okay. And Commissioner Gustafson.
I agree with all of the previous comments on the chimneys. I'm with Commissioner Bland's approach. I thought also that Commissioner Lutfi's suggestion, I believe that they consider flattening the roof would make it a little less visible as well.
Okay. All right, and I think that I've made it around. So I think that we have a consensus to support with, even though Commissioner Shamir Baran, you're fine with the brick chimneys. I think everybody else would like to see the chimneys truncated and metal flues used, that the color of the stucco be restudied in consultation with the staff to be more neutral, and that the bluestone band be set back. And I think that they can explore flattening the roof, but I think that most people were comfortable with the roof and really limited their recommendations to those three things. So why don't we put those three things into the motion? And Commissioner Devonshire, can I ask you to read this one?
Sure. In the matter of 186 Sullivan Street in the McDougal Sullivan Gardens Historic District, an application to construct a rooftop addition, install HVAC units and raise chimneys. I recommend approval with some modifications, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features. The work will only be minimally visible from public thoroughfares at a distance from oblique angles in the context of other rooftop accretions and secondary facades. The simple massing and design of the proposed rooftop addition will be in keeping of typical rooftop additions and bulkheads throughout the district. That the rooftop addition will be set back from the front and rear facades, thereby maintaining a sense of the building's original massing. And the chimneys will be extended only to a minimum height to meet safety regulations and feature materials and finishes typical of these utilitarian accretions found throughout the district. However, I find that the work will be highly visible over the rear facade from within the common central garden, which will detract from the significant feature of the historic district. The brick chimneys appear tall and call undue attention to themselves, and the proposed yellow color of the stucco's addition rear wall will visually connect to the rear facade and exacerbate its presence as seen from the garden. I therefore recommend that the visibility of the addition be reduced and seen from within the common garden by painting in a neutral color. that the chimneys be lowered in terms of the masonry cladding with flue extensions to make up the rest. And, sorry.
And that the bluestone band and fence be set
And that the
back.
bluestone band and fence will be set back from the rear facade to reduce its visual impact.
And Commissioner Bland, can you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum. Commissioner Goldblum?
Aye. Sorry.
Sorry. Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, so it's approved with those modifications. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
The next item is number 4. This is LPC 19-39379, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 486, Lot 27, 65 Greene Street in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District, a store building designed by Jonathan B. Snook and built in 1873. The application is to replace the stair platform and install storefront infill.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the meeting and are now in control of the presentation. And please state your name for the record and you may begin. And just a reminder to unmute yourself if you are muted.
I apologize, I was on mute. My name is Efraim Perez. I am from SWA Architecture. I am representing ownership in this presentation for 65 Greene Street. Thank you very much for the opportunity for this presentation. I can begin. If you let me know when I have control, I can start.
You can just click the presentation screen and you may proceed.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So this building is located at 65 Greene Street. It is on the west side of the street between Spring and Broome. It is a typical style of the Soho district in cast iron. And let me move forward. So scope of this project, and these are the scope of this project. If you look at the lower left-hand side of this sheet, you'll see a picture of the existing facade at 65 and 67 Greene. Ownership owns both of these buildings, and the reason for this project, based on scope, is to revise the elevator that opens to the sidewalk to an existing elevated loading platform to be lowered to the sidewalk level, to align with the sidewalk level, to give a barrier-free access to both interiors at the ground level, at the lobby for 65, which connects to 67 Greene. The scope will include removal of the entire platform at the sidewalk level, made of diamond plate, and to install new diamond plate at sidewalk level, a new stairwell at the entrance, and replace and repair in kind the existing vault light that is located and buried underneath this existing diamond plate platform. As 67 is almost a mirror version, even though they were done by two different architects, it's almost a mirror version and has historical fabric left. We will be using it as a precedent to match the same appearance on the 65 side to create a more harmonious facade at the storefront. The two pictures above show the existing, the one on the upper left shows from the south side, the existing metal platform that exists. And on the picture on the upper right shows the north side of that existing diamond plate platform. These are photographs. Apologize for that. I'm going back one. These are the photographs showing the site that is north and the site that is south of our of 65 Greene Street. And these will also be used as a precedence for us to match and create harmony at the sidewalk level. There is an existing granite sidewalk flags that will be that are in disrepair. These will be replaced in kind to match existing, and also to stay in the same language as the adjacent properties. This is an interior shot of the elevator shaft behind the existing elevator door that opens onto the platform. And the reason for this photo is just to show that the existing storefront that was here is no longer there. It's just now some metal paneling just to create structure and necessary waterproofing. The color floor plans on the lower side, on the left-hand side, show the existing condition in blue. In that bright blue, we have, we're illustrating the existing diamond plate platform. And what's in gray is the existing granite flags at the sidewalk level. We are not changing the existing granite curb, so I just want to make a note of that. That's not part of our scope. We will keep it. We will only replace the flags as needed. On the right lower hand side, what you see in red is actually the existing vault light that is buried underneath the platform, the elevator platform, which we in our proposal intend to expose and repair and replace in kind those that are damaged and need to be replaced. In this page, we're showing basically a ceiling at the vault, and what we would like to illustrate here is in red is the existing vault light that is currently there and slightly damaged, and our replacement and what we are proposing will be the exact same amount of light, of vault light. These images show what is in the ceiling at the vault. So in the lower left-hand side, you can see there is existing vault lights in fairly good condition, which we plan to reuse. And to the right of that, you'll see there is also existing light vaults that are not in good condition, that are in disrepair, that we will replace in kind to match existing. This is an elevation of the entire 65 Greene Street facade, and we're showing the area where our scope of work will be focused on, which is just at the facade and the sidewalk level. This is a close-up. So on the right, we have existing, as you can see, we have the platform at the lower level. At the bay to the right, we have an elevator that opens onto that loading dock. And in the center bay, we have entrance to the commercial level. And on the right, we have, on the third, we have a vitrine, which is just a standard commercial window. So in our proposal, we will be lowering the elevator and replacing and removing that entire bay to build a new facade at the storefront to match historic, At the entrance, we will be adding a new stair that will be made of the vault light, and we will replace the doors to match historic and those of 67 Greene Street. And the last bay will also be replaced to match the historic, which is also on 67 Greene Street. This is a elevation of the entire building showing both 65 and 67 Greene Street. Our scope of work, as mentioned earlier, is just focused at the bottom portion, and what our goal is to create a nice homogeneous facade to align with what historically was there previously. This is a close-up of where our work. Currently, we have under a separate application work to repair and also build new staircase for 67 Greene Street, but this application is just to focus on the 65 Greene Street. But this is an illustration to show you how we're going to use the existing 67 Greene Street entrance and doors and storefront window and use that to model and use as a precedence for our what we are repairing at 65 Greene. These are details showing each bay and the different conditions. We have an existing section showing at the elevator where we will be removing this existing platform, which is here indicated in this dark gray, and we will be lowering it and aligning it with the sidewalk, again, to create barrier-free access into the building. In the center bay, we have this existing platform, which will then be removed and replaced with new stairs that will be built from vault-like material to match existing. And the third bay, which is just a vitrine, the commercial vitrine, we will lower and again, just align, finish with diamond plate, but to align with the sidewalk level. This is a close-up detail showing the elevation at the elevator bay. Again, the goal here is to lower the elevator to sidewalk level, and then again, use the details from the adjacent property and emulate those to create a similar language in the facade treatment. This is the bay, a close-up of the bay and a detail section of the bay at the entrance, showing the new proposed stairs made of vault light. And again, replacing the doors with doors to match the existing historics that are located on 65 Greene, 67 Greene. And in this bay, this is the last bay where there's no entrance, just a commercial vitrine. We will basically remove the platform, lower it to sidewalk level, clad the base, the foundation base below the bulkhead, window bulkhead, with diamond plate to match the sidewalk level, and again, remove the existing storefront and replace it with one that is more in tune with the historic style. These are again close-ups, and the first bay is again showing the elevator bay where we're finishing with the vault light and align with the sidewalk. Beyond, you can see the stairs that will be made of the vault light material as well. This is a section through the stairs, the entrance, and this is a section through the vitrine where we will be cladding the facade, removing the platform, which is illustrated here, and replacing it with just cladding the foundation, the masonry foundation in a black painted diamond plate. These are details showing all different conditions, how we will align and how we will treat the construction at the sidewalk to ensure that we create a waterproof finish. Please note that these vault lights will be installed, but they will not be producing light. They will be a finish to match adjacent properties and to match what historically would have been there. This is a three-dimensional rendering showing the existing conditions. And this upper portion here in gray, you can see this is the existing platform as it is now. This is the bay of the elevator. And what we hope to do is to lower this and bring it to the sidewalk level, produce new stairs here, and lower all of this to the sidewalk level, this area, this bay, and also replace these granite sidewalk flags. This is the proposed. As you can see, what's indicated here in blue is where we're going to bring back to life the vault light and expose it along the elevator entrance at sidewalk level, at the new proposed stairs for the entrance. And because there was no existing vault lights in the last bay at the vitrine, it used to be formerly a lift of some sort. So we're just going to finish that with a diamond plate to match the adjacent. These are exploded axonometrics showing the construction and what we propose to do on the top level, and the finish, what you'll see as indicated in other adjacent properties at 63 Greene Street, where the finish is a diamond plate at sidewalk level. Waterproofing material is needed, new concrete sidewalk below, and repair any steel that's been damaged, because there's been a lot of water damage that's been penetrating and has access to steel. So that will also be repaired and part of this scope. This axonometric is showing our detail on how we propose to install the vault light to match historic appearance. Again, we're using precedences from adjacent properties where these are not actual lights, but instead are a finish that will be placed on top of required waterproofing with a new concrete curb, new sidewalk is needed, and again, repair structure. And what we did is, on the right-hand side, we have some examples of other properties at 105 Worcester and at 467 Broome Street. One of the things as we were researching is to try to find a style for what the existing railing would have looked like. What we did find in previous approved LPC is a very simple steel tube, utilitarian, painted black, and that's basically what we're proposing here to stay again in line with what is typical and common in the Soho district. And that basically ends my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. And I see Commissioner Jefferson has a question, so I'd like to recognize you now.
Yep. Could you go back to your axonometrics? You have two. You have the existing condition.
I'm hitting the button, but it's taking time to respond, so bear with me. This is proposed, and this is existing.
So help me with your strategy, your thinking. So the removals, how do you decide how much to remove? Because if you go to your proposal, almost everything is removed.
Yes, we want to remove the entire platform, loading platform that's there. And again, the intent is to bring as much as we can to align with the sidewalk. And the catalyst here was to create, handicap accessibility, and then just try to, create a nice homogeneous design that is aligned with the sidewalk.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? All right, not seeing any questions. We'll move to public testimony. And I'd like to remind anyone who's in the webinar who'd like to speak to raise their hand. And I'll turn it over to Lisa to take the testimony.
Yes, and nobody signed up to speak for this item, and I don't see any hands raised. So I don't think we have any testimony for this item.
Okay, and Rich, did we receive a resolution from the community board or other written testimony?
Yes, we received a resolution from the community board recommending denial of the design of the elevator door and the window above and approval of the remaining work.
Okay, so approval of everything else, but denial of the configuration of the door. Okay, and so I would like to ask the applicant to respond, and then I think, do have a few more questions for you. I see a hand raised, and so we'll start with your response and then take some additional questions from commissioners. Do you want to speak up to the community board's concern with the door configuration?
Yeah, unfortunately, as I was going through this presentation with Caroline and Olivia, who have been helping me assemble this presentation, excuse me. Something popped up on my screen here that probably should not be. So if you bear with me for a second. I apologize for that. We had taken pictures, but they were too late to put into the presentation, which show very similar, almost identical configurations based on the same styles of cast iron buildings and the doors, the details, the moldings. So in our presentation, and I can go back to what our intent was, because of course we're limited to the function of what an elevator does and how it needs to behave versus how a door entrance. So this sheet shows our proposal for the doors. And again, this is reflecting what is currently at 67 Greene, which I believe from a bit of the research we've done is the actual doors, the historic doors. And so our intent is basically to emulate that look. And because the elevator has its function and has it behaves differently, we had to create a panel, but at best, as much as we could, if you see at the upper portion, we created alignment where we could to match the storefront vitrine. However, the door entrance and the side panel were required for the function of the elevator. So this wasn't, it's not, if we had our druthers and can create some other look there, we would, but we're limited again by the function of the elevator and how we can access it.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just also note that the commission has often approved double transoms with the top one aligning with the main transoms in situations where we are approving, an at-grade entrance and the door is no longer going to align with other doors. So this is a solution that the commission has approved, often because if you do an attenuated door, it's sometimes too tall to operate, particularly for barrier-free access where it requires too much effort to pull it open. Okay. And I know that Commissioner Goldblum had a question, so I'm going to go back to you and recognize Commissioner Goldblum.
Hi, thank you. This is a question for you, Chair Carroll, or for Corey. Have we approved vault lights as an applique over solid substrates below before?
We have, and I'll let Corey speak to our regulatory history on that.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have done that. The commissioners have, the staff has per the current rules. So there's never been a requirement that they must be above an open space as the original vaults were, so that light can come in and out. It's more the presence of the texture and the materiality of the vault lights being what you see from street level. So that is something that's been approved at least several times.
On a technical level, it seems that that's an assembly that could potentially shorten the lives of those vault lights because the underside is trapped. Have they fared well?
Well, I couldn't attest to what's happening on the underside. I would imagine it would be wise to assemble them in a way that would allow them to be, lifted and inspected periodically. But if that doesn't happen, and failing that, if they did have problems, they would need to be put back in place or replaced if ultimately they didn't last as long as they should.
Thanks.
Okay, other questions? Okay, so I think we should move to our discussion. I'm going to begin unmuting everyone to take a vote to close the hearing. So Commissioner Gustafson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you second that?
Second.
Okay, great. So the hearing is all in favor, sorry. Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And this is one building that has a twin next to it. And the proposal is to replace storefront infill, particularly at the elevator. I think the other two sort of, Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the door and the other window are approvable at staff level. And this is really about the dropping of the loading dock and the elevator door. And as has been stated, the commission has approved similar configurations and has also approved vault light covers over a solid substrate. So that's what the proposal is. And why don't we start with Commissioner Holford-Smith?
Sure. I think this is a really good option. I'm really glad that the owner has decided to reuse the vault lights, which are so often covered with diamond plate. It's really commendable that they want to bring back that material. I agree with Commissioner Goldblum had similar concerns about trapping water, but I see that they have a drainage material underneath the vault lights, so that could potentially help any water that gets under there to drain away. Hopefully there's a place for it to drain to. My other comment was perhaps something that they could work with staff about. They are proposing to wrap the bottom of the columns with diamond plate, where there may be some original cast iron that could be left exposed. But I think that that's something they could work with staff on. The elevator door, I agree, it's a little bit awkward. And I was wondering perhaps about making it look just like the storefront rather than having the double transom. But I think in terms of symmetry and balance with the other facade, what they have drawn is actually probably more is preferable. So I think I can approve the application.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin? Go the other way.
I think that it is in line with other applications, similar applications we have approved, and I can approve it as presented.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum?
I agree with Commissioner Chapin.
Commissioner Devonshire?
I agree as well. I think it's approvable as is.
Okay, Commissioner Chen?
Likewise here.
Okay, Commissioner Bland?
Approvable as is.
And Commissioner Lutfi?
Agree.
Commissioner Jefferson?
I have a problem because I think for this particular building, these two particular buildings, the platform was so important. It's a strong architectural character that to remove most of it, when you could cut simple in it, makes sense to me to remove all of that, taking away some strong character of these two particular buildings.
Okay, Commissioner Gustafson?
Yeah, I'm with the majority.
Okay, and Commissioner Shamir Baran?
I think it's approvable, but I agree with Commissioner Holford-Smith's comments about the wrapping of the columns with the diamond plate, and for maybe staff to advise that they just be careful about that in terms of what they find once they've removed material.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I think where we are is we have enough votes to approve it as is, but I think we should also ask them to work carefully with the staff on how the base of those columns is handled, and if there is any cast iron, that be treated appropriately. So let me see, why don't Commissioner Holford-Smith, why don't you go ahead and make that motion, since that was your suggestion.
in the matter of LPC 1939379 65 Greene Street in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. A store building designed by Jonathan B. Snook and built in 1873. Application is to replace the stair platform and install front infill. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the cast iron vault light stairs and sidewalk to be removed are highly deteriorated, have been modified over time, and are presently hidden under diamond plate. That the reconfiguration of the loading platform is consistent with alterations that have occurred over time at many buildings in the streetscape. That the lowering of the elevator entrance to grade will provide barrier-free access in the least intrusive manner possible. That the proposed new infill is in keeping with the configuration, materials, and details of other ground floor infill at the building and other buildings in the streetscape. That new cast iron vault light panels will be incorporated into the proposed design at the new stair treads and risers, and at the areaway, thereby maintaining the presence of these significant features at their historic locations. And that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. We recommend that the applicant work with staff to review the condition of the existing cast iron at the base of the columns and preserve as much of the original cast iron as possible.
Okay, and Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Nay.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 10 in favor and 1 opposed. The motion carries.
Okay, so that's approved, and we'll move to the next item.
Thank you.
Next item is number 5. This is LPC 20-10238, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1228, Lot 61, 424 West End Avenue and the Riverside West End Historic District Extension 1, a modern style apartment building designed by Philip Birnbaum and built in 1979 to 83. The application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Mary Diericks, and I'm the preservation consultant for this project. Hopefully with me are Bob Esnard, representing ownership, and Tony Freda of Freda Design Architect. Okay.
It's a reminder to just click the screen to advance the slides.
I'm here.
Got it. 424 West End Avenue is a modern style apartment building built in 1979 to 83 and designed by architect Philip Birnbaum. Here it is in 1980, looking pretty similar. The existing windows are aluminum sliding windows. They are triple, double, and small single and angular bay windows. The existing sliding balcony doors are also aluminum. This is the West 81st Street facade where you can see the angular bays. This is a close-up of the triple and the double windows. They're not in good condition. They don't perform even adequately, and they don't keep out air and water, and many have to be replaced right now. These are the corner bays. This is the typical balcony door and the small kitchen window. The small windows are in particularly poor condition. You can see this one sort of slanting. The doors are just partially visible from the street. Here's a photo of the frame. The frames are an integral part of the exterior walls. They're behind the brick and tied in on all sides, and the frame will remain in place to avoid damage to the masonry. The building could be seen from the street from all sides. West End Avenue, West 81st. Here it is from Broadway on top, and a small sliver on from West 80th at the bottom. This is the existing elevation on West End. Here's the proposed. It's proposed to replace the sliding windows with casement windows, mostly in the same configuration and with the same aluminum finish. Here's the existing 81st, and here's the proposed. This is existing and proposed for both the double and triple windows. As you can see, they will be in the same configuration, and the finish will be matched. The new casement, the proposal for casement windows is because the casement windows are more energy efficient by a lot, particularly than these, maybe 50% at least. And they're also more efficient than new sliders. They're easier to operate long-term and give you more energy efficiency. There will be some diminishment of glazing, as it is a more heavily built sash, and the existing are quite lightweight. For these double windows, the diminishment is 13%. This is the double window. And here's the triple window that will have a 11% reduction in glazing. Here's the single window. Here we're going to a single pane from that slider with a panel on the bottom. And that will be, even with that single pane, it will be a 19% reduction in glazing. Here are the sections and plan. This is a building-wide window replacement, but it's also proposed to establish a master plan for any future installations. And that is our presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions, commissioners? Okay, raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, not seeing any questions, we'll turn to public testimony. And oh, Commissioner Lutfi has a question. Go ahead. Commissioner Lutfi, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. This is a question for you and staff. Do we have a rule in terms of percentages when you're losing the glazing, like what's appropriate and what isn't? And what would that be?
Okay, so, and Corey, you may want to elaborate, but just briefly, when the staff reviews applications, the staff is allowed to approve windows that on the front facade that match the historic window in terms of configuration, operation, finish, and details, but it does give the staff some discretion for variations in details to allow for a modern technology, but with the caveat that the glazing is not diminished more than 10% in a large apartment building. And I think that's right, Corey, isn't? Yeah.
That's right.
So this would be more than 10%.
That's right. So this would be 13%. So the reason this is before the commission today, while it does maintain for the most part, except for the single window, the historic configuration and finish, it's a change in operation, and the glazing diminution is slightly larger than the 10% that would be required for a staff level approval.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. So
can I say that we looked very hard for the slimmest window type that we could find, preferring casement, but the casement and sliders were oddly similar. And this, because of the size of the windows, this type of window across the manufacturing line, they were pretty much about this size. And the manufacturer that we've chosen said that they really couldn't be any lighter weight and still be a safe window to use in this size opening.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move to public testimony now. And if you are in the meeting and would like to testify, please raise your hand so we can identify you. Lisa?
And we did have one person sign up, Sean Corsandi. Sean, I'm bringing you in.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sean Corsandi for Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee appreciates the applicant's efforts to prepare a Windows master plan. This not only allows them and their residents the power of certainty, but extends a level of respect for the underlying structure and community at large that a thoughtful plan of stewardship is in place. The committee found that the shift from sliding to casement windows will largely not be disruptive from the street. This comprehensive act will not detract from the building's defining features and is an appropriate alteration. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee supports approval of this application. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sean. And I see one hand raised, Mark Diller. Mark, I'm going to bring you in. And Mark, you just have to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. The screen disappeared on me for a moment there. Sorry. This is Mark Diller. I'm the chair of Community Board 7. Our board almost unanimously voted to approve this application for a couple of reasons. One of which was that the concepts that have already been advanced to you. In our view, there's nothing historic about sliding windows in our district. They have very few precedents and even fewer in the historic district. Casement windows are more typical of this kind of a window configuration. We were not in the least bit concerned about the loss of glazing, as the overall fabric appearance of this building will be preserved. And so we were happy to approve this application and recommend approval to you. Thank you. Oh, and I'm sorry, and we also very much appreciated the effort to make a master plan out of this so that we don't have to hear serial applications about this particular building going forward. So for all those reasons, we approved and we thank you for the time.
Great, thank you, Mark. And with that, I don't see any other hands raised, so I think that is the extent of the testimony.
Okay, and Rich, do we have any other written testimony or comments?
Nothing additional that the community hasn't already brought up.
Okay, all right. So I'd like to turn to the applicant. Are there any final words you'd like to say before we close the hearing?
Thanking Community Board and Landmark West for their support.
Okay. And commissioners, if there are no final questions, we'll move to close the hearing. So Commissioner Holford-Smith, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
So second.
Okay. All right, so let's begin our discussion.
All in favor? You need a vote.
Yes, we're beginning our discussion. Okay. So I'm going to start with Commissioner Shamir Barron. Would you like to lead this discussion?
Sure. I don't think that the replacement of these windows is really going to harm the building or eliminate any real significant architectural material. So I can support it. I think it's approvable.
Okay. And Commissioner Gustafson?
Agreed.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson?
I support it.
And Commissioner Lutfi?
I do too. And thank you for the master plan.
And Commissioner Bland?
I do too, but let me add that I once worked with Philip Birnbaum early in my career, who taught me how to lay out apartments. I'm not sure that was a useful piece of information, but I think it would be fair to say he would be having a complete hoot knowing that the Landmarks Commission was approving his change of windows.
Okay. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, likewise here. I also visited his office to seek guidance on how to lay out apartments at the time.
I love these personal stories. Commissioner Devonshire
I approve.
and Commissioner Goldblum,
Agreed.
Commissioner Chapin,
I support the application.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
I support it.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus to approve. So Commissioner Shamir Baron, would you make that motion?
Yes. In the matter of LPC 2010238, 424 West End Avenue, Riverside, West End Historic District Extension 1, a modern style apartment building designed by Philip Birnbaum and built in 1979-83, the application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows. I note that the building is not one for which the Riverside West End Historic District Extension 1 was designated. And I recommend approval, finding that the replacement of the windows will not eliminate any significant architectural or historic features, that the proposed windows will match the existing windows in terms of material and finish, and the change in operation from sliders to casement and slight change in configuration will be consistent with the compositional organization of the facade and will be in keeping with the style of the building. That over time, the full implementation of the proposed master plan will help to unify the building's fenestration pattern, and that the work will not detract from the streetscape or diminish the special architectural and historic character of the historic district.
And Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that?
Second.
Okay, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Baron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you. Well, we'll move to the next item.
All right, and this will be the last item before our lunch break. It's item number 6, LPC 20-09078, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1495, Lot 32, 65 East 83rd Street, aka 63 to 69 East 83rd Street, 63 to 71 East 83rd Street, and 978 Park Avenue in the Park Avenue Historic District. A Renaissance Revival style school building designed by Schickel and Ditmars and built in 1899 to 1900. The application is to construct a rear yard addition.
And Commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing and now have control of the presentation. And please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Shelley Friedman, representing Loyola School. I hope you are all, and you and yours are all well. My purpose here is very brief. I want to raise 2 points. First, I want to let you know that the head of the school, Anton Orslani, and the VP for Finance, Ed Knapp, are joining the meeting as resources in the event that you have any questions for them regarding the school. The main presenter will follow me, and that's Ernie Harris. The second point I wanted to raise is just to explain, I've been asked to explain the zoning issue, which will move this application to the Board of Standards and Appeals following hopefully your approval. I can do it all off the photograph on the screen. You will see the school in the lower left of the block, 2 buildings below the church, St. Ignatius, which is an individual landmark. The school is in the historic district, but it is in a zoning lot that extends east toward Madison Avenue. These are all buildings under the control of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. When one takes into account all of the buildings on the zoning lot, which does not include the church and does not include the parish house. We have a open space deficiency that we will have to address in a variance at the Board of Standards and Appeals. As Ernie will tell you, it's a very small deficiency. I've also been asked to point out that the green square that you see in the middle of the block is not a mock-up. It is actually a cage. That building is a mixed-use building owned by the Jesuits that contains residential, office, and school functions. And that is a cage over a rooftop recreation deck that belongs to the school. You will see the small areaway in the middle surrounding these buildings, which is a very small little donut, dark, and that will be a portion of that will be the development site. A portion of it will be built upon with the building that Ernie Harris is now going to present to you. Happy to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Mr. Harris, just a reminder to unmute yourself and to bring in the presentation. You can just click on the screen.
Can you hear
Mr.
me
Harris,
now?
yes.
Okay, good. I'm not sure how to advance the slides. Can someone assist me with that? Okay, I think I've just figured it out. Let me go back to the beginning. Okay, one thing I want to clarify in Shelley's comments is that the reason we need to go to the Board of Standards and Appeals is a lot coverage issue. With all of the combined, there are 3 zoning districts here. When you combine them all, the lot coverage requirement we have is 75%, and we're requesting lot coverage of 79%. So those 4% of increase are the reason that we need to go to the Board of Standards and Appeals. Okay, the next slide is a survey with some heights superimposed. This next slide after that, I think, is a clearer representation. The red dashed line here is the limit. To the right of that is the limit of the Park Avenue Historical District. You see that it includes, the district includes the school and the parish house, and of course the church itself is an individual landmark. These are historic photographs, obviously. Well, and the one on the upper right from 1929 was done when Park Avenue was widened. A couple of things here. This is, you're obviously looking at St. Ignatius Church with the parish house to the left, but you also see a chimney here, which you'll see in a few minutes is red brick. The chimney was not original and apparently was added either in 1906 or 1920, but in either event, it's been there for 100 years. What I think is worth pointing out here is that this is an ecclesiastical complex and it's been developed as such from the beginning of the 20th century. The parish house came first, that is the building in the middle here, 1881 to 83 by Patrick Keeley, followed by the church itself, which was begun around 1884, completed around 1900. And the school essentially completed around the same time, begun perhaps a year earlier, 1899. You'll notice an obvious similarity of style between the Renaissance Revival church and the school. And it occurs to me that Renaissance architecture, there were 2 primary building types. One was the church and one was the palazzo. And I wonder if that in some way was consciously thought of by Schickel and Ditmars. What you'll also notice here and in further slides is that all of the facades that were meant to be seen from the street for the church and for the school are in fact limestone. Anything that was not meant to be seen from the streets is common red-brown brick. These are a number of photographs of various conditions. We commissioned a drone to help us understand all of the different connections here. A couple of things worth pointing out. On the photograph on the lower right, you see a very clumsy condition with the dormer of the parish house bumping into the school. It's a clumsy condition, but it's a condition that dates from 1900. You also see that in the second photograph down on the left side. I'll go back to these if necessary, but let me continue. The large photograph on the right is the location where we want to put the addition. We're looking south at the rear facade of the school, the 1900 school. On the right side is the 1954 addition, the gym here, is the cafeteria below. And above the gym, there are 3 floors of Jesuit residence, which you see just peeking in on the upper right. On the left side of the slide, beginning right here, is the parish house. These are the section views showing that in section, there is no visibility either from 83rd Street or from Park Avenue. We'll see in a minute that there is a narrow area where there is visibility, and we'll show you that in detail. This is an elevation from Park Avenue showing, of course, you see in elevation what you wouldn't see in perspective. The addition itself, this is the existing stair tower, elevator bulkhead, and the existing chimney. 83rd Street elevation, again, elevator bulkhead, existing stair tower. The historic district ends at where the hand is, and you see the church in the background with the green indicating the roof. This is an axonometric of the existing conditions looking to the southeast. Parish house on the left, the annex on the right, the original 1900 school in between. This is a proposal, this is the proposed axonometric. We see an addition here, which is simply rendered in red-brown brick. We're suggesting a stainless steel trellis with climbing hydrangea up to the level of the wall of the gym. We're proposing a courtyard here with skylights going down into the part of the addition which is below ground. A ramp will be provided to provide handicapped access up into the gym. And the idea of the courtyard is that it be as much as possible, a green area accessible to students and in fact to the priests who live in the parish house. These are 4 axonometrics from 4 different views. The one on the upper right shows the climbing hydrangea wrapping around onto the gym building and shows a planting area with seating in front of it, in front of the gym. These are sections, one looking east and one looking west. The addition is straightforward. There's an expansion of the cafeteria or commons on the cellar floor. The ground floor is just a connection really to the courtyard and to the rest of the building. There's a counseling and lounge area on the first floor. Second floor is classroom and an expansion of the library. Faculty room above that, STEAM lab, STEM STEAM lab above that, and finally a music and dance studio above that. This is a section looking south with the parish house on the left, and you see the connection through on the cellar floor from the existing commons into the new. Building elevation, showing everything that we've already spoken about. These are building elevations, the west and the east. Again, I think we've addressed these in the axonometric. These are the studies of the visibility of the elevator bulkhead. Again, there's no visibility looking directly up from Park Avenue, but there is visibility from two locations. This is the first one, which is on 84th Street, looking diagonally across. You see the church on the right side of the photograph, parish house. This is the existing chimney, again, from either 1906 or 1920. And this is the elevator bulkhead that you see behind. Just a little bit farther east is another area of visibility. Again, you see the elevator bulkhead in the background. A third area that we looked at was 83rd Street from Madison Avenue. There was concern that there might be visibility here, but in fact, there will not be. The addition is outlined in red here. By the way, we're removing the existing mechanical equipment on this roof and replacing it with equipment on our existing roof. On our new roof, pardon me. This is a study of what might be considered historical elements. One is the mansard roof of the parish house, and the photographs on the right show the condition. Again, it's clumsy, but it's been there for 100 years. The second issue of concern is the stained glass window, which you see here in the photograph. We are not touching the location of that window. We are in fact adding a connection to the stair at the floor below, which is just a simple plain glass window. For interest, it's the stained glass is 21st century in any event, so it's not really historic. Finally, this is an indication of materials. The stainless steel trellis you see on the left. We've installed this in a garden we did for the Jesuits further west on the same site a couple of years ago, and the planting there is doing quite well. We're proposing red-brown brick to match the existing as much as possible. We're proposing aluminum storefront windows, casement and fixed. And we're proposing a green roof being made of 2 foot by 2 foot containers, which contain planting material. The remainder of the presentation is an appendix, which shows the demolition and construction plans, but I'm not sure that we need to go there.
Okay, thank you. We'll see if we have questions, and that may lead us to some of those slides. Any questions, commissioners? Please raise your hands. Okay, not seeing any questions at this time. We'll turn to public testimony. So anyone who is in the meeting who would like to speak should raise their hand, and I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Great. We have one person, Laura, who signed up to speak. And Laura.
Hi,
you ready to go?
Laura Seking for Friends of the Upper East Side Historic District. Friends Preservation Committee believes that the proposed 6-story addition is thoughtfully designed and will not have an adverse impact on the integrity of the Park Avenue Historic District, nor on the individually landmark Church of St. Ignatius Loyola. Finally, Friends takes no issue with the limited visibility of the elevator bulkhead. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Laura. And Laura was the only person to sign up to speak, and I don't see any other hands raised, so I think that's it for the testimony.
Okay, Rich, do we have a community board resolution?
We do. Manhattan Community Board 8 recommended approval.
Okay, thank you. Okay, commissioners, do we have any final questions for the applicant before we move to our discussion? Okay, so I'll just turn to the applicants to see if there's any final comment they would like to make before we move to our discussion.
I have no comment at this time.
Okay, thanks. So Commissioner Shamir Baron, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll move to our discussion on this extension to really a campus that has very limited visibility except for the rooftop bulkhead. So let me see. Commissioner Bland, would you like to start on this one?
Sure. Well, it does make it easier when invisibility is the rule here. But that said, I think it's a very thoughtful and well executed architectural solution to the programming, which I'm sure is needed to keep this campus alive and well for the future. So I completely support it. I also, being a gardener, want to affirm Ernie's idea of using climbing hydrangea. What a spectacular and perfect plant material. It is deciduous, of course, but it looks great in the winter as well. And boy, you know, if you don't know, I'll tell you, it sleeps the first year, it creeps the second year, and it leaps the third year. So get out of its way. It's fantastic. I'm looking at two of them right outside my window. Congratulations. I think it's a great scheme.
Okay, great. And I'll go the other way this time. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Ben's comments. I have no problem with it. It's appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum. I mean, sorry, Commissioner Devonshire?
I can approve it.
Okay, and now Commissioner Goldblum?
Agree.
Commissioner Chapin?
I agree with Commissioner Bland, and just want to say we see a lot of institutional proposals, and I think this is a particularly excellent one.
And Commissioner Holford Smith?
I think it's very appropriate.
Commissioner Shamir Baron?
Very appropriate.
Commissioner Gustafson?
Appropriate as is.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Appropriate.
And Commissioner Lutfi?
I agree. It's a very good project.
Okay, great. So I think we have a consensus to approve. Commissioner Chapin, would you read the motion?
Yes, thank you. In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, LPC 20-09078, 65 East 83rd Street, AKA 63 through 69, East 83rd Street, 63 through 71, East 83rd Street, 978 Park Avenue Historic District. A Renaissance Revival style school building designed by Schickel and Ditmars and built in 1899 through 1900. Application is to construct a rear yard addition. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of Park Avenue Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage, conceal, or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the school is part of an ecclesiastical complex occupying the majority of the block, and that the rear yard is completely enclosed by this complex. That the simple massing of the addition will be in keeping with the utilitarian character of the rear yard and will feature a reddish brown brick to match the materials at the rear yard secondary facades at the school, parish house, and church, and a stainless steel trellis on which plants will be trained. That the only brick-clad elevator bulkhead will be visible from public thoroughfares. And that it will be viewed on the northeast, I think minimally visible from public thoroughfares, and that it will be viewed from the northeast on Park Avenue at a distance from a single oblique angle and in the context of other utilitarian rooftop accretions. And that with the exception of the school building adjacent to the proposed elevator, that excavation beneath the courtyard and addition will be designed to avoid underpinning and will be executed in compliance with DOB regulations under the supervision of a licensed professional engineer. And that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Park Avenue Historic District.
All right, and Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
I will second it.
All right, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Baron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
11 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, so that is approved. Thank you and good luck. So we will now break for 30 minutes for lunch. We'll return at 1:15. We are going to turn off our webinar. We're going to lock our webinar. So those of you who are applicants, you may want to return at 1:10 as we start to open it up again and let you get in so we can start exactly at 1:15. Members of the public, our YouTube live video is stopped. So if you would like to continue to watch this afternoon session, you should go back to the LPC YouTube channel to access the live feed. And we'll see everybody again at 1:15. Commissioners, you just need